Masyn Winn flying to left his first time. Puts a charge into that one. See you later. Big fly for Masyn Winn on this Thursday. Absolutely tattooed by the Redbird shortstop. His 18th of the year.
That's what it sounded like last night as Masyn Winn hit a home run, and then later in the evening, we found out officially that Masyn Winn is getting the call-up to the big leagues. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, this is the most excited I've been about an in-season call-up in a hot minute. Now, Nolan Gorman was a big one last year. I'm not trying to downplay how significant that was, but Winn's a little different. And maybe this is my own sensibilities coming out a bit. Masyn Winn is the exact type of player that I fall for hard. He is incredibly athletic. He has a cannon of an arm at shortstop. I love great defense, and Masyn Winn personifies great defense on the baseball field. He also doesn't strike out a whole lot and is going to play with a crazy amount of energy. In other words, Masyn Winn has a lot of the same attributes that made me fall in love with Harrison Bader. It's how I became the president of the Bader fan club. Winn has a lot of that stuff. And oh, by the way, did I mention he is unbelievably confident in his own abilities? When you put all that together in one package, Alex, the chances of me being excited are like 100%. So I'm incredibly excited today, especially given the fact that since May 1st, he's batting .310 down in the minors, and that's supposed to be his weakness. He's not supposed to be a great hitter. He's supposed to be this defense-first player, and he has an OPS of over 900 with 16 home runs since May 1st. So, yeah, I'm quite excited about the news of the day that Masyn Winn is officially getting the call-up to the big leagues this evening.
I am too, and I think the excitement built even more for me after we talked with him earlier this week. Once we had an 8-minute conversation with Masyn Winn, got me jacked up for when he gets that call-up. And the difference between Nolan Gorman or Jordan Walker, with Jordan Walker, I think, was in the same hype train as this. But the difference between Nolan Gorman or guys that have been highly touted players in the past and Masyn Winn is because the Cardinals and Cardinals fans have been searching for a career shortstop for like the last 20 years. Since Edgar Renteria, it's been, who's our shortstop? Who's our shortstop? Who's our shortstop? Now, at least from the big picture, you don't have to worry about it anymore because it's been put out there that this guy's defense is probably going to be the best, if not one of the best in the National League, Major League Baseball. We're talking about a guy who's had success offensively the last couple of years. We're talking about somebody who is bringing youth and bringing attitude up to this ball club. So for the first time in like 20 years, it feels like you can say the Cardinals have a shortstop and don't have to worry about it. That's where my excitement comes into play.
Yeah, you guys know I'm a sucker for good defense and good pitching. So Masyn Winn's arm at short, which is an 80 grade on the prospect scale. Yeah, I'm excited to watch Masyn Winn. We'll see how the bat translates. I'm expecting those typical rookie struggles, so I'm not reading too much into that. But I'm excited to see what he looks like. I'm excited to see him at the big league level, see that defense that has been so highly praised, the arm that you've seen at like the Futures game, which we've seen on display where he can touch like 100 miles an hour. I can't wait for the tweet today that says Masyn Winn has broken a record in the StatCast era for the hardest throw to first base. Now, hopefully it ends up getting to first base and not going wild. But
Got the numbers for you.
Yeah, what is
You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So the fastest throw by a Cardinals infielder in the StatCast era was set up by Nolan Arenado. Less than 90 miles per hour. It's at 89.9 miles per hour.
That record's
Masyn
meant to be
Winn,
broken.
according to Cardinals Reek on Twitter, already has 13 throws this season above 90 miles per hour. So Masyn Winn basically once out of every 10 games breaks the Cardinals record for the hardest throw by a Cardinals infielder in the StatCast era. Unbelievable.
Can I say one more thing why I'm pumped up about him? Because this guy's got cojones. You know why?
Oh, I thought you were going to say so we don't have to see Motter at short again.
No, we're going to see him at second base. You know why, though? Because he said, I want the number 0. How many guys just walk into
Did
the
you
big
see his
league?
explanation?
No, what was
Closest
it?
to the number 1,
It's
which is
closest that they've got to number 1. He knows how to play the game, too, which I respect the hell out of.
Love this guy.
Chef's kiss.
Like, think of number 0s in pro sports. They're all studs. Now you've got one.
I can't name
all of them?
Yeah, I can't name another number
The
0.
only one that
Jason
comes to mind
Tatum?
for me is like Sullinger from the Celtics.
Isn't Tatum?
Yeah, I guess Tatum is.
Isn't Lillard?
I don't know. No. Sure.
He is.
Isn't he 11?
Or is he 1?
I thought he was 11.
Damian Lillard is...
I thought he was 00.
Well, we're
He's
looking
definitely
at,
not double
We're
zero.
looking for 0, not double.
His
It'd be even
nickname
better
is
if he did.
Sub-Zero. Oh, he is number 0.
That's what I thought.
Damian Lillard,
All
number
right.
0.
Now you got 2 numbers. Now
I was confident.
That's 2
with my-
studs. I could have
Not only did I
sworn.
brush you off, I was like, no, idiot.
Well,
Stop it.
I'm not thinking of you. You thought, what's his face signed with the
I
Saints. So
thought he used to
I'm
be number
terrible
11.
with numbers. I want to say that up front. I'm the worst
I'm
at
actually really
remembering
good
who
with
wore
them for
what
some
number.
reason.
Randy, great with numbers. I am notoriously terrible with it. Randy, by the way, speaking of him, happy early birthday to our guy Randy Carricker. I asked him before the show today, what was the last time, because Randy has great frame of reference for this stuff, the last time that the Cardinals drafted and developed a stud shortstop prospect? Because I can't find one in the last 20 years.
Brendan Ryan?
Okay, again, I'll ask the question one more time before that, because
Maybe
that
I
doesn't
misheard
count.
it.
The last Cardinals shortstop that came through the system that was expected to be like a 10-year fixture at the position. Because Paul DeJong was not really a top 10 prospect in the Cardinal system at any point. Same thing was true for Tommy Edman. They drafted Delvin Perez to be that guy, and then he never developed to be that guy. He said the last time that he can remember was Gary Templeton.
Yeah.
Guys, Templeton made his debut in 1976.
The good old days.
Tanner's Mima was watching baseball as like a 20-year-old when Gary Templeton made his debut for the Cardinals. It's been like
couldn't even watch it. It was only on radio.
generations since the last time that the Cardinals had this kind of a prospect. We'll see where his career takes him. But that's what builds to the excitement of this. This has been a black hole position for the Cardinals developmentally for, man, as long as I can remember, and probably as long as anybody in our listening audience right now can remember.
What was the criteria? Somebody that they drafted?
Developed, became a 10-year fixture at the position.
Well, you forgot about the legend that is Delvin Perez. The only part is he didn't become a 10-year fixation. They were hoping he became
doesn't
a
listen to the
10-year
show.
fixation.
Shame on you.
See,
He said
this
that.
is you getting back at me for shutting you down on the whole Damian Lillard wearing number 0.
I
You
didn't
heard
hear-
me say that, right?
No, I didn't hear you say Delvin Lillard. I was looking up more number 0s in pro sports.
Scale of
Kerry
one-
Robinson won 0 for the
Scale
Cardinals.
of 1 to 10, T-Bone. Where's your excitement level for this going into tonight?
I would say probably I'd go 9, would say where I'm at. With the excitement for Masyn Winn. Again, I'm excited to see the defense, and then I'm excited to see what the bat translates to. And he's had all the hype. I don't remember who we had on. I think we had somebody on when we were in Alton. Someone that was a prospect writer, if I remember correctly, and said, or no, Amsinger. We had a cut from Amsinger that said he could be like the Cardinals' Trey Turner or something along those lines. I'm not expecting that tonight, just to be clear.
Tamp down that excitement a little
But
bit.
if he hits the ceiling that the Cardinals think in his bat translates from AAA to the major leagues, you've got a Gold Glove caliber shortstop, and you're going to have a guy that could hit near the top of your lineup if he hits. And again, it's going to take probably 2 to 5 years before we truly see what he is. But yeah, I'm excited to see this. I'm excited to see what he looks like tonight. I saw him play in AA last year, and you can see all the tools are there. It's just a matter of if it will translate here to the big league level.
Don't even care about the offense tonight. I want to see the defense, and I want to see the speed. Only thing I care about right now. The offense is going to come.
He's definitely breaking the record tonight for the hardest throw by an infielder, right? That's happening. We expect that in night
Are
one.
we giving him credit, though, if he throws it away?
Yes.
Or the
No,
first
no, we're
baseman
not.
doesn't catch it.
Oh,
Well,
Gold.
they've got Goldie.
Yeah,
over
but
there.
Goldie might need a night off. Could be
on
Mater.
No. He's making it. He is definitely going to be at first tonight. He's not missing this. Nolan Arenado's going to be in the lineup tonight. Goldie's going to be in the lineup
Be great
tonight.
if Masyn Winn's on.
Oh, I would be so mad.
Recall him and say, no, we need him to get up here
By
and
the
get
way-
used to it.
Guys, he should and will bat ninth for 2 reasons. 1, that's where you get him.
Not lead off?
No.
Come on, Ollie.
And two, the other reason why, because you need to limit the amount of at-bats that he's going to get. They waited until the exact day when they could call him up for 45 days remaining in the big leagues. By the way, Mo, I guess it took all of like 3 games for him to show that he was healthy.
I saw that glute. It was
It was
fine.
the glute, man. You got to make sure that, hey,
Okay.
man, if a glute gets injured,
Next time, Mo, come up with a better excuse.
rub it down, takes a
All of us
while.
understand. We all get it. We understand what's going on here. We're not 4. We get it. It was 45 days remaining. That's when he can retain his rookie status for next year. That's advantageous for the Cardinals and for the player. It made sense. We get it. It's all right, man. You don't have to lie to us. But when you look at where he's going to be hitting, it's also not just 45 days to retain his rookie status. It's 135 at-bats. So they have to limit the number of at-bats the rest of the way because they want to play him every day. The best way to do that is by batting him ninth. So put him in the 9 spot. Let him go out there, showcase his athleticism, showcase his skills defensively, get a few at-bats per night. He's getting a cup of coffee down up in the big leagues. Don't send him back down. He is your starting shortstop probably 5 out of the 6 games every single week the rest of the way.
I can't wait till he's hitting 300, showing off the glove. And then they go, oh, bleep, he's approaching that plate appearance. We got to send him down.
Yeah.
He can't handle the breaking ball.
His glute got hurt again. He's hitting the ball on the ground too much.
I think he's going to start I think he's going to be on like the Contreras plan. Not except
I
DH.
think he's going to be more than that.
I think it's 2 out of 3 days would be my guess he starts.
I think they play the hell out of it, and then by the end of the season, I think you start to see him pump the brakes a little bit.
1 day a week, I think he gets off. I think he gets off 1 day.
I think they play the hell out of him from now up until it gets closer to that 145 at-bats, and then they just say, like, okay, now let's temper it.
Can I give you a couple Ollie quotes? This comes from John Denton in his story today. If you wanted to be a little bit more excited, Alex, here's some quotes. By the way, I think he's going to be Ollie Marmol's favorite player.
I can already see the glisten in Ollie's eyes.
Is it like when he looked at Lil Poppy at the batting cages?
It'll be a little bit better than that.
Justified.
I mean, that man was drooling when Poppy was hitting.
Quote, he's one of the most exciting players I've seen in a while. I'm thrilled that he's coming up. We're going to have a chance to see it here. This is an electric player that we're about to watch.
Shots fired at Taylor Motter. Motter's going to be like, are you kidding me? I brought the energy. I brought the electricity.
He's ready to come up and he's ready to win. That's how I would describe it.
Nice.
He continues. Our organization has done a nice job of developing all these young guys into winning players. We're continuing to see Walker take steps in the right direction. We're seeing that with Masyn Winn joining him now. You think about Lars, you think about Donovan. We've got some talented young guys here who are going to be around for a really long time that are also part of a significant winning culture.
Tinfoil didn't say Nolan Gorman's name. Huh?
It's because he's on the IL.
So was Brendan Donovan. He doesn't have an arm.
Well,
It's a good point.
Tinfoil.
To be totally honest, it is a good point.
to be fair,
That he
Gorman's
made
name
there.
never popped up as an untouchable, too. So
If you could compare him to one player, Masyn Winn, who would you compare him to?
Like position, like
Player comp.
somebody else go, because I'm confused by the game.
I'd say, oh, boy.
He's confused by the game,
No,
too.
I know. I'm trying to think off the top of my
this
head.
is a confusing
yeah,
game.
I know
Player
what he's
comp.
looking for.
I'll give you mine. Andrelton Simmons.
Yeah.
My player comp is Andrelton Simmons. When he came up, he was one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball, was considered to be a just complete wizard defensively. First 2 years, full seasons in the big leagues, won the Gold Glove for both seasons, was a bit below league average offensively, which I think is going to be the expectation for Masyn Winn as well, but added some real flair to the position, played with a lot of energy. Finished 15th in the MVP voting in his rookie season, Andrelton Simmons did. I think we forget how good this guy was early on in his career. The offense never really came around the way that anybody would have hoped, but was a 10-year MLB veteran and started almost every day over the 10 years for his teams.
I would say I think he's going to have the glove of Simmons, and I think he's going to be offensively, at least early on, somewhere in between Jeremy Pena and Anthony Volpe. I think that's what it's going to be. I don't really have a specific player right now. I would probably combine those 3 guys, the glove, Andrelton Simmons, and then somewhere between Volpe and Pena offensively.
I got 2 of them, and tell me if either of these are crazy. Rafael Furcal. First one I kind of thought of just in terms of body build type of player.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean,
Furcal's a pretty good
Furcal is
player.
incredible. I'm not thinking Cardinals Furcal. I'm thinking like
thought-
Furcal at the beginning of his career.
Remember back to the T-Bone 3 of like Donovan when I said him? I thought Donovan was going to be like Furcal, but with utility player.
The other one, Brandon Crawford. Crawford was never like a power hitter. He was never a 300-plus hitter, but he was always a
I always think
reliable.
Crawford is a little better offensively.
But I always think Crawford's
And not
undervalued
that-
defensively. No,
Yeah,
I don't think
that's
Masyn Winn will be undervalued defensively, but I think Crawford's a better defensive player that people give him credit for, and I think Masyn Winn's going to be one of these guys.
I like the Furcal one. I could see where he's kind of got the same size as Furcal. I can see where he is a little bit like Furcal, and I think Furcal was like
Dodgers was just sensational.
I think he was like a 270, 280 hitter, great defense, and was like 10 to 15 home runs typically.
Speed was there too. He was always a threat on the base paths when he got there. You knew that
Probably
the defense
more so than Winn will be. He was like a 30 to 40 stolen base guy early in his career. Don't think Winn's going to be that. He's at like 15 this year.
Well,
in the minors.
the Cardinals don't hold him back.
That's a good point.
Take the
Alongside
leash
Alex
off,
Ferrario
right?
and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, T-Bone, He wouldn't stop pestering us behind the scenes. So, guys, we talked a lot about Mizzou. They've got all this excitement. I'm done. I'm sick of it. We got to talk Illini football.
You sound a little like him, but cry and whine a little bit more.
That's fair. So we're going to talk to Jeremy Werner.
Listen here.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get his thoughts on the Illini football team going into this fall. Are we sleeping on them? Should they be considered a Tier 2 program right now in the Big Ten? We'll get to that coming up in about 15 minutes, but coming up next. Normally, under any other circumstances, this would have been our lead today. Adam Wainwright earned himself another start last night. He deserved the hell out of it. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Where's his mind as he walks out to the mound tonight?
Well, anxious, nervous, determined. I mean, there's so many things going through his mind. Been there, done that when you're at the tail end of your career.
Wainwright delivers to second to get the out there. And they're at 2 away for the Mets here in the first inning. 2-2, looking strike 3. Second punch out for Wainwright.
That's what it sounded like last night on Big Fox as Adam Wainwright gets through a really nice outing for the Cardinals. Don't want to make more of it than we need to, but 6 innings, 3 earned runs. We were critical of him going into the performance, Alex, last night. We gotta give him some praise after that one. I didn't expect anything like that. It was his second quality start of the season. Interestingly enough, both have come now against the New York Mets. He allowed 3 runs, 4 hits, 3 walks in 6 innings. It was his 244th career quality start for the Cardinals. Only Bob Gibson has more in a Cardinals uniform. So a nice outing for him last night. The biggest thing that came out of that, Alex, we don't have to have the same conversation going into the next start that we had going into this one. He earned himself some grace period. Adam Wainwright now, no question about it, will make his next start. Ollie Marmol confirmed that last night after the game. Credit to him. He said it was a change in mentality. He likes the fact that he didn't throw his bullpen between starts. He felt like he had better stuff going into that one. I didn't think he was perfect, but he made some good pitches. He did the classic Adam Wainwright thing where he gets out of it with 0 swings and misses and finds a way through. Good for Waino. Happy to see him be able to be back into the rotation and us not to have the same conversation going into next Tuesday's start that we had yesterday.
Yeah, frankly, for me, after that one, it's just to the point now where I'd say just scrap the conversation of yanking him out of it. Even if he gets lit up the next couple of starts, I think he earned it enough showcasing his want and ability to find a way to be competitive in the game to allow them to try it the rest of the way. Like, look, Waino, when he gave up that first hit to Brandon Nimmo, I'm like, oh, this is going to go poorly once again, and found his way to get through that, gave them the first 3 innings, which it was looking like, okay, if the Cardinals could just put some offense up for Adam Wainwright, you're in a good spot here. But he didn't look like a guy that I feel comfortable with going to the mound, but he performed like a player that deserves to go back out there for the rest of the season, because you come back to the realization of why he was brought back. Yes, you're chasing 200, but you want to be competitive. But now you're at the point where Adam Wainwright is finding ways, at least in this one, to give you competitive outings. And
that's all you ask for. Just be competitive.
And even if there's no swing and miss stuff, even if it's not the best stuff, just be competitive for the rest of the way. Let your offense do what it's supposed to do and try and give you those chances to get 2 more wins.
See, I'm not willing to write him in pen completely as a guy that can start the rest of the year, because I still need to make sure that he's competitive, because if he reverts back to the previous 2 starts, then the conversation is back on pulling him from the rotation. But yesterday was a good sign, and I think the fact of the matter that they were saying, and you heard Waino say this after the Royals start, my stuff looks good in my bullpen, and they decide to skip the bullpen to see if it translates to the game, and it looked like it did. And that's the encouraging part is, okay, maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the plan moving forward is he just can't throw bullpens anymore. Father Time's caught up to where he just can't be doing those anymore, and now this is how they keep him fresh, because I thought his stuff looked good for Waino's stuff last night, and he was able to locate, had the curveball working fairly well for him. So it was an encouraging start to see. I think they now feel like they have somewhat of a plan for Adam Wainwright to try and keep him in the rotation the rest of the year and make sure that they get competitive outings from him moving forward.
Yeah, all I ask is give the team a chance to win.
Yeah.
And Waino goes out there every 5th day. We would be having a very different conversation about this if the Cardinals were still trying to compete for something meaningful this year. But they're not. We know what this season is about. It's about development. It's about getting opportunities for other guys. And with 1 spot in your rotation, you can carve that out for the guy that is trying to get to 200 wins. If this was 3 guys trying to do the same thing, yeah, we'd have to have one of those spots probably opened up for opportunities for somebody else. But you got 1 guy in your rotation that's doing that, and that's fine. I've got no issues with that. Waino looked really solid last night, gave you an opportunity to win. Unfortunately, on the other side, you had somebody that was just better. Jose Quintana was awesome last night for the Mets. Jose Quintana's been great since he's returned from the IL for the Mets. My question for you guys, because I would love to have Quintana back in St. Louis this offseason. We mentioned, hey, do the Mets consider maybe making the move with Q that they made at the deadline with Verlander and Scherzer of paying down his salary to try to get back a really solid return in terms of a prospect? You, T-Bone, were on the fast lane the last couple of days. You got the call up to the big leagues, and you got a really good quote from the Mets beat writer for The Athletic who said basically, yeah, they're not interested in doing that. They want Jose Quintana to be a part of their rotation next year. All right, unfortunately, that's what it is. Is there somebody on this year's free agent market that you guys think could be for the Cardinals next year what Jose Quintana was for them 2 years ago and what Jose Quintana has been for the Mets so far this season? Is there anybody that immediately comes to mind for you that you feel like could be that for the Cardinals this offseason if they signed him as the 3rd best starter in this year's free agent market.
You want to say it together, Alex?
No, because I know where you're going with this, and I don't like this option.
It's James bleeping Paxton.
Oh, Jesus.
That's the opposite of what we're talking about.
No, this is him.
No,
This
I'm
is
talking about
this is the guy.
consistency. I'm talking about a guy that takes the mound every fifth day and gives you 5 to 6 innings.
He will.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's his history been on that?
He's made 16 starts this year.
What did he do
And
last
what did he
year?
do last year?
And then the year prior to that.
He was recovering from Tommy John. Let's give the guy a break. That's a new arm. He's a new man. James Paxton's the guy. I would give him 2 years, $26 million. I'd give him the exact same deal that Quintana got.
It's ridiculous.
And I think he would be the guy.
Cool, so you're going to Matthew Liberatore as that starter for that
No,
spot.
this guy is 5 times better than Liberatore.
Yeah, but your
5.
guy's not available.
No, he is available. James Paxton's the guy that I would bank on. I seriously would. Joking aside, I would bank on James Paxton. He would be the guy that I'm willing to do a 2-year, $26 million deal for, and I think he can serve as that Quintana role. I mean, he has been a guy in the past. The last 3 years, he has dealt with injury, but I think he can be a guy now that he's come past the major injuries now, and he's gotten 16 starts this year, and he's been very effective for the Red Sox.
I mean, it's a terrible choice, but
2 years for $26 million,
choice.
I would be willing to do it.
Awful choice. I don't know if I have one because I don't know
so
if there's
not
somebody
so bad
that.
a choice, huh?
No, I don't want your choice. I would rather not have a choice than your
Yeah,
choice.
you'd rather have Liberatore.
All of them are in the position where I just don't know if I'm going to get the consistency that Jose Quintana offers. I think if there was one that I was to hone in on, Michael Lorenzen.
that's one that I actually had pulled up.
I think I like the idea of Michael Lorenzen. Now, it's hard for me to argue consistency with him because last year it was, 100, or this year it's 122, and it's the most he's ever pitched. But I also know that teams have used him as a starter, used him as a bullpen piece. He's gone back and forth. I like Michael Lorenzen as a number 4 in your rotation next season, so I would go after him and give him the Paxton money.
Can I give you guys one that is kind of an outside-the-box range of this? Because, I think that the 3 that you could point to, and they all have the same issue as your guy, James Paxton. I think it's Kyle Gibson, but he's less effective. So this is like a lesser version. It's like a best choice discount brand version of Jose Quintana. Michael Lorenzen, who hasn't been able to stay healthy, and Kenta Maeda, who also has not been able to stay healthy. Those are the 3 guys that I could point to that maybe fit into this criteria. But the guy that I really think is you want to go out there and get somebody that's Jose Quintana of this year's market, it's Shota Imanaga. It's the guy that's coming over from Japan that is the lesser version of Yamamoto. He's 29 years old. He'll be 30 next year. He has really great stuff. But there's questions about what he's going to be able to do at the major league level. Nobody seems to know. So if you could get him on a 3-year deal worth $55 million or something like that, I think that would be an ideal scenario for you as your number 3 starter. So that's the route that I would go. I don't think there's anybody that fits the same criteria this offseason that you saw going into last year from Jose Quintana. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get to Ask Us Anything, 314-399-9646. But next, Jeremy Werner is going to join the show. He's the publisher of Illini Inquirer. T-Bone's been telling us all offseason, got to talk a little more Illini football. We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fall to the Mets yesterday 4-2, and they are back in action tonight. 7:15 will be first pitch against the Mets, and Zach Thompson will be getting the start for St. Louis. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find a road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley, talking some Illinois football today on 101 ESPN. And to do so, we go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Jeremy Werner. He's the publisher of Illini Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter at jwerner, WERNER 247. Jeremy, we appreciate the time, man. How you doing today?
Doing well. Middle of training camp, trying to figure everything out, but just about 2 weeks away from the opener. So exciting times, man.
It is. So, Jeremy, we were talking the other day, and I've been sleeping on Illinois football going into this season. I'm not going to lie to you. And I was reading over on The Athletic. They had their tiers in the Big Ten, and they had as a Tier 2 team going into the season Illinois football, behind the top three, the big boys in the conference with Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. Illinois was right there. Do you think that's a fair assessment of where this program should be rated going into 2023?
Well, considering last year they were there, right? Like they were a top half team. They really should have won the Big Ten West,
Yep.
But they started the season 7-1, and they were kind of the breakthrough team and had everything kind of sitting in front of them of getting to the Big Ten championship game and having this real special season. But they faded down the stretch. They lost to Michigan State, who was a talented team, but really a reeling team at the time. Purdue comes in, and Illinois still, if they would have won that game, they would have gone to the Big Ten championship game. And they lost to a Purdue team that hadn't played all that well up to that point. But then they went to Michigan, took Michigan down to the wire, just weren't able to close it out. So they lost 4 of their last 5 games. That kind of kept them from really having a special season. And, of course, they lose a lot of guys in the NFL. Chase Brown, their All-American running back, and 3 defensive backs that won the top 70 of the NFL draft. But at the same time, they return a lot. They are really strong in the trenches. Julian Pearl, Isaiah Adams are guys that consider going to the NFL and likely would have been drafted late. They decided to come back. More importantly, Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph, 2 guys could have been drafted. Johnny Newton could have been probably a 3rd rounder at the worst last year. He decides to come back and is now a projected 1st rounder. So the Big Ten West gives them an avenue to be that good in the Big Ten because Penn State's, Ohio State, Michigan, they're at a different level. If you get to that next tier, Illinois is capable of getting to that level, I think, of being a Tier 2 team. But they do have question marks. They have question marks at quarterback where they're breaking in a new starter, likely Luke Altmaier, and then they got to replace 4 or 5 starters in the secondary, and then everybody else has to up their game to another level. But I do think when we talk about the Big Ten West, Iowa, for me, would be the favorite. But after that, Wisconsin, they're talented, but that's a lot of newness there. They're trying to do something they haven't done before, which is throw the ball a lot up in Madison, Wisconsin. And then Minnesota has to replace a lot. So I think Illinois is one of the higher floors in the Big Ten West, but they still got some big question marks they got to answer.
So, Jeremy, that biggest question mark has to be the replacement of Chase Brown and the production that he provided last year. How and can they do that?
Well, it's probably not my biggest question because what does Brett Bielema do? He runs the football incredibly well. When he lost, John Clay or Monte Ball or James White, all these guys, he always had somebody else that could replace him. And I do think their offensive line, which returns 3 returning all Big Ten players, I still think that's going to be a real strength for this team. So I do think they're going to be physical. St. Louis native Reggie Love is going to be one of the top options there. He's really kind of waited his turn, been patient. He's had some injury issues in the past, but had a really strong end of the year. Had 80-plus yards against Northwestern, started the bowl game. Just a really reliable back that is healthy, is just kind of good at everything. I don't think he'd have like an elite trait, but I do think it's his time. And then Josh McCray, who as a freshman showed capabilities of being a bell cow back. And that 9-overtime win against Penn State 2 years ago, guys, he ran for 140-plus yards. He ran for 140-plus yards against Purdue. So bigger back, but does have some dynamic ability. But he lost last year basically all due to injury. But he's back this year, and he and Reggie Love are going to be those top two backs. But I think the running game will remain strong, guys. And it could, Chase Brown's a phenomenal player. They do not have a Chase Brown in this running back room right now. But they had to put so much of the workload on him last year. He had 328 carries at led Power 5 schools. And to be honest with you, I think that hurt him at times late in games. I think it hurt him late in drives where he was just gassed. They didn't have really any other options. But now you have Love, McCray. They feel good about their backups there. Caden Fagan, a four-star freshman they're excited about. Aiden Lawfrey, Jordan Anderson. But also Luke Altmaier, who's likely to be the starting quarterback. He can run too. So I think the run game can be as productive, potentially more productive, just because they have more options. They're deeper at their options, but they don't have another Chase Brown in the wings, that's for sure.
All right, Jeremy, you mentioned him. The big question for Mizzou is the quarterback position, and it's the big question at Illinois as well. Now, I don't want to make this out to be that they're trying to replace some all Big Ten quarterback. Tommy DeVito was serviceable last year. He was accurate. He got the job done. Luke Altmaier has not had a ton of experience at Power 5 level, but was a legitimately big-time recruit coming out of high school. I was excited about the potential of Mizzou being able to go out and get in this offseason. Instead, he ends up at Illinois. What have been some of the reports that you're hearing on him? How excited do you think Illinois fans should be about what he can bring to the position?
Yeah, Brett Bielema's been saying for the last 8 months that this is a battle for the starting quarterback job. I would be shocked if it is not Luke Altmaier. He's a former four-star prospect. Took Jackson Dart into the season in that starting battle, and then Luke got hurt in his first game, and Jackson Dart took over and had a really good season for Ole Miss. But Luke Altmaier is the most talented option they have. John Paddock, a Ball State transfer, good, experienced option as a backup. I think he's a really good addition, especially considering he's a preferred walk-on for Illinois. But Luke Altmaier, the talent is all there. The tools are all there. You mentioned Tommy DeVito, very competent starting quarterback in the Big Ten. Was a top half Big Ten quarterback. Illinois hasn't had that in a long time. So he was a huge improvement. But where Illinois struggled was in the red zone and with explosive plays. Tommy and the receivers, really, they just were not good deep ball threats. But Tommy is in a training camp right now. It's been a long time since Illinois has had somebody in an NFL training camp deep into August at this quarterback position. But Luke, I expect growing pains, right? Just because he doesn't have the reps. Tommy DeVito came here as a basically 3 or 4 year starter at Syracuse. Luke Altmaier has started one game. He played in the Sugar Bowl 2 years ago after Matt Corral got hurt. He came in as a true freshman, and to be honest with you, he competed. But he's got a really good arm. I wouldn't say it's the cannon of an arm, but he can make all the throws. But the biggest thing he does, he's got unbelievable touch on his deep ball. He can really drop it in anywhere. I think he's going to hit more home runs than Tommy DeVito. The question is, can he hit the singles and doubles as consistently as Tommy DeVito, who is unbelievably accurate, great decision maker, and avoided turnovers? I think Luke Altmaier is going to have more turnovers, probably more mistakes, especially early on. But I do think he's going to hit more home runs and kind of open up the deep passing game. And he adds a running element. He's a really good athlete, so I think they're going to run him a little bit more, or at least have the option to make plays with his feet. I think he's got a higher ceiling, but does it all balance out, guys? Because Tommy was so consistent, such a good decision maker. It really complemented that defense, that run game. Luke just can't make the big mistakes. So do all those home runs add up to as much of a productive guy? But he's definitely got a high ceiling. The key for him is going to be avoiding mistakes and staying healthy.
Jeremy, going on the defensive side, because you mentioned Brett Bielema does one thing and he likes to run the ball. Well, it's also, that's a tough team to play against on the defensive side. But they got a lot of guys that they're replacing on the defensive side. Do they have the right pieces, and is the expectation to have that same tough team to play against?
And no Ryan Walters. Big loss there.
Yeah. No, the questions are all in the secondary, guys, because the front five, it's as good as, I want to say, almost anybody in the Big Ten. Obviously, Michigan's really good. Ohio State has a ton of talent. But Johnny Newton is the number one projected defensive lineman in the 2024 draft. Keith Randolph is expected to be an NFL draft pick. Seth Coleman has a chance to be an NFL prospect, an outside linebacker for them. Gabe Atkins was added to the freaks list by Bruce Feldman of The Athletic the other day. He is he's a freshman All-American last year. He can take his game to another level. That defensive front I think can play for a Michigan, can play for an Iowa, can play for, a Penn State. Penn State's got a pretty good defensive front too, but that's the caliber of defensive front I think Illinois has. But they're probably going to need it because they have to replace Devin Witherspoon, the number 5 pick in the draft. They have to replace Sidney Brown, who's a 3rd rounder of the Eagles. They have to replace Quan Martin, who's a 2nd rounder of the Washington Commanders. So they have a ton to replace in the secondary and 4 starters to replace. And one of their top guys, Matthew Bailey, has been sidelined with a foot injury, and I don't think he's going to play in the opener. Maybe could be out for a couple games. So they've had a lot of transfers. They got some young talent there, but I do think their best friend of a young secondary that could be a little bit of a problem is a phenomenal defensive front. And Illinois certainly has that. They also have Tariq Barnes, a linebacker returning. So I think the defense will be good, guys. I just don't think it's going to be quite the elite level as a passing defense as it was last year, just because they have so much talent and experience to replace. And that's why offensively you need them to take a step forward, score some more points, give you a little bit more margin for error. But you also need the pass rush, which was good last year but not great. You need them to take another step and get more pressure and more sacks on the quarterback. Because they should be great against the run. They should be great rushing the passer, but they need to take another step with a young secondary.
Jeremy, we'll get you out of here on this. Talking to Jeremy Werner, Illini Inquirer is where you can find his work here on 101 ESPN. Just really quickly, what is your prediction for their record this season? Because as I look up and down this schedule, man, it almost feels like there's just one, almost for sure loss, and that's Penn State. And we've seen Illinois play Penn State well in the past as well.
Yep.
Where do you fall on this? What do you think they're going to do this season?
Yeah, it's a great thing that they, if you're looking to make a Big Ten championship game, you don't got to go through Ohio State or Michigan, right? Penn State comes to your place. Listen, I think that's going to be a tough game. I think Penn State's a top 10 team in the country. But then you have the rest of the Big Ten West. But you also have a non-conference guys that outside of Florida Atlantic, there's not a given win. Like Toledo is the MAC champion. Illinois needs to beat the MAC champion, but that's not easy in the first week of the season, right? Kansas, you're going to Kansas. Mm-hmm. It's a hell of a lot better program with Lance Leipold now there. That's a Friday night game with a good quarterback in Jalen Daniels. So, and then you got a bunch of toss-up games in the Big Ten that are going to be close games, and that's the key. In the Big Ten is close games. I think Illinois should trounce Northwestern this year with what's going on there. I think Indiana at home is a very winnable game. But this team could go anywhere from 6 to 9 wins, in my opinion. 10 is possible if everything goes right and everybody stays healthy and Luke Altmaier's as good as they think he can be. But I think they're somewhere in that range. I'm probably deciding between 7 and 5 because I do think they'll probably have some growing pains early in the year with a new quarterback and a new secondary, so they could drop one of those non-conference games. But I expect them to be in the Big Ten West race, guys. I think if they had a 7 or 8 win season, that'd be so huge for this program that just has not been able to put together winning seasons back-to-back in almost 25, 30 years. So if they could finish above 500 in the Big Ten for a second straight year, that'd be the first time in more than 2 decades, guys, that they could do that. So I think they've been wanting sustained success. Brett Bielema was a part of that. This team thinks it has a chance to get to the Big Ten championship game through the Big Ten West, the last year of it. It remains to be seen. I still think they have questions. Iowa's a good team. Wisconsin's a good team. But I do think come mid-November, this team should be in the mix, or at least have a chance to be at the top of the Big Ten West.
Brett Bielema, not your coach if you want to go 10-2 every year, but probably your coach if you're pretty comfortable with going 8-4 every year. And there's nothing wrong with going 8-4 every year. Hey, Jeremy, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. Got a better glimpse into what Illinois football could be this year. Hopefully we'll talk with you again soon if Illinois gets off to a hot start.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And 8-4 every year will probably get you a statue in 10 years at Illinois.
Hey, man, that's how it is at Missoula as well. We appreciate the time, Jeremy. Take it easy, man. It's Jeremy Werner, publisher of the Illini Inquirer. Always appreciate his time here on the show. Alex, I find it really interesting, man. Those first 2 games are probably going to determine what the ceiling could be this year for Illinois. Take on Toledo. You should win that game. I understand Toledo's a really solid mid-major program. If you're Illinois and you want to go 7-5, 8-4 this year, you got to win that game. I've circled the game. Week 2 at Kansas. I know people laugh because it's KU and they have been such an atrocious football program for 15 years. Since 2007, when there was that classic Mizzou versus Kansas battle, they have been awful. They're on the up and up. And I'm not saying they're on the up and up to the place where you expect them to go 8-4 or anything like that. No, let's not get ridiculous. They have a really good quarterback in Jalen Daniels. And in college football, if you've got a good quarterback, man, you've got a chance to be 6-6, 7-5. And they've got a head coach in Lance Leipold that I think is one of the more underrated coaches in the country. You put all that together, that is not an easy game for Illinois. So if they're able to start the year 2-0, I think Illinois fans can start dreaming about what this season can be. But it really all comes down to, what does that start look like for them? Because that's going to carry a lot of weight.
10 wins, though, T-Bone. 10
doesn't it sound
wins.
great? I don't think they're going to get to that.
I wish I could say 10 wins for Mizzou.
I think Jeremy had it right to where I think Toledo, Kansas, like you said, BK, if you win those, then you're talking 10, maybe.
I was reading Toledo.
9. I think they're probably going to be a 7 to 8 win team.
If they go 8-4 or better, it'll be the first time, to his point, since 1989 and 1990 that Illinois has won 8+ games in back-to-back seasons. I'm telling you, man, like, as a Mizzou fan, I understand what this is like, to have to reach a certain threshold of quality on a year in, year out basis, right? As a Mizzou fan, Alex, I don't know if you're the same way. Man, if you go 8-4 every season, 7-5 every season, but you have the potential to go higher, you have the potential to have those special seasons like Mizzou did in 2013, 2007, 2014, or like Illinois did back in like 2007 and 2001. If you could have those individual seasons that you can dream on, and you consistently are an above average program, I think that is what it should look like at a program like an Illinois or a Mizzou.
I was to say, you know what I would
That's what
give.
Bielema gives you.
I was to say, you know what I would give to know that every season I'm at least going 7-5, and then with the hopes of going better, but it hasn't been that way. It's been 6-6
Exactly.
and maybe worse than that.
Worse than that most
yeah,
seasons.
like 6-6 was probably exciting for us when Eli did that what was it, first or second year. So yeah, I would say 7-5 being a baseline and knowing that I could get better. That's what everybody wants.
Somebody from the 314 says, BK, stop calling yourself a Mizzou fan.
Yeah,
Yeah, quit it.
yeah, you jerk.
Hold on, why can't I be a Mizzou fan?
I'm the Mizzou fan of this show.
I paid that
Yeah, you
university.
fraud.
Pay that university $100,000. You best better believe I can call myself a Mizzou fan. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort
You're not
Service
that
text
guy.
line. Ask us anything, sports or otherwise, next. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything, sports or otherwise, coming up in about 5 minutes or so. What are the other in-season call-ups that made you feel the way that Masyn Winn is making you feel for the Cardinals? We'll get into that here in just a little bit. But let's start with this from the 314. Guys, I was told by somebody recently that you should tip your mailman at the end of the season, kind of like a bonus. Is this something that you guys do, or would you consider doing it? I've heard this on trash.
Yeah, I do.
As well.
I do trash around Christmas time. I've never done the mailman, but maybe I should. I do trash.
I don't know if this is too personal of a question. What do you give to the trash guys? Trash pickup.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, kind of.
Like, it'll be our first year doing it.
My wife usually does it. She puts it in an envelope and puts it out there. But I would say it's somewhere between like $20 and $25.
See, I've heard of the give something to the mailman because like my family's always done that.
I've heard like Amazon gift cards too. Like if you just put like a $15 Amazon gift card in them, you could do that. We just did it with the trash
because out of business.
Yeah, well, we started doing it at our old house because the people that lived there just left all of their trash there, and so we had a lot of work for the trash man when he would come. So we started doing it then around Christmas time, and we just kind of carried it over.
I say the only one that I know of is the mailman. I never heard about the trash guy.
I've heard doing both. I feel like the Amazon delivery people is who we need to give a nice bonus to.
You ain't wrong with that.
At our house every day,
especially around Christmas time.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
Are you on Amazon all the time getting stuff in?
My wife is.
I guess with the newborn, I guess it makes sense too. I'll say I don't order that much from Amazon.
Newborn.
Somebody said, as a mailman, we really do appreciate it. I give $20 to each of my trash guys and mail person.
See, here's the part that and this person's texting in who is a mailman. We appreciate the work you do, but is it the same mailman on the route? Because because I always see different people that do ours, and so that's why I never knew.
I think we've got two that do our route.
I've seen two at my apartment.
The trash company is the same guy every single Thursday that I see them. I don't know about the mail, so maybe it's different in certain areas.
Somebody said leave a water outside every once in a while as well. They really appreciate that. That's a really good point.
That, or I've seen people that do like bags of like individual chips and like, like peanut bars and stuff like that. Especially the summertime, man, that's huge.
Somebody says about $20 is more than enough. Cookies are great as well around the Christmas time.
See, I'll let my wife do the cookies. I think cookies are better than money.
Gonna disagree with you there.
If I'm a mailman and I got
have to walk around with those.
What I can get for
not if you're driving.
I guess if they're driving.
Yeah. And if I'm in the middle of winter and it is freezing gonads outside, I would much rather have a big thing of fresh cookies than
I'm going to have Kara make some fresh coffee for our mailman this year during Christmas time. That doesn't sound good to you?
Is it going to stay hot?
Well, she works from home now.
So she's going to run it out to him?
Yeah. Our dog lets you know when the mailman is coming.
Do you know your mailman's name?
No,
that would suck.
Maybe learn that.
I'm not there during.
But what if she is just chilling in her PJs and just hanging out with the baby?
Around like 3 p.m.
She's got vomit on her shirt, so she doesn't want to get up and run coffee.
314-399-9646.
I'm so glad you thought that because that came into my head.
Eminem's a hero to all.
Guys, on the opening drive today, Randy said that he thinks Masyn Winn should lead off for the Cardinals. What do you think about that? He's only a rookie. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. No.
That's what the text line said I wouldn't.
Let's not put him there. I hit him 7th or 8th.
Hit him 9th. I don't want to see him.
Double leadoff is a big job at the Cardinals organization. Fermin had it last night.
Yeah, so they don't take it seriously. So I would hit him 9th today. I don't want him having any pressure being a leadoff man that has to hit in front of Goldie. And I can understand maybe the thought process of that because we've talked about this before with young guys that come up. Why would you hit him leadoff in front of Goldie? Because then he's going to get pitches to hit because you don't want somebody on base in front of him. But I want him hitting 9th today. I don't want any I want his main focus mostly to be defense in the first month and a half that he's here. And whatever you get offensively is a nice bonus, kind of like what you're giving the mailman.
I don't care. 7 to 9. That's where I'm at.
Masyn Winn projects to be a 9-hole hitter for you next year. Let's get him comfortable there. See what it looks like the rest of this season, and if you got to make some adjustments, fine. But right now, first of all, it helps you with limiting his number of at-bats, which is going to be something that is under consideration the rest of the way. And secondarily, it serves the purpose of finding out what he can do from that spot going into next year. That double leadoff guy that T-Bone always talks about, well, Masyn Winn serves perfectly in that capacity as a 9-hole hitter. Guys, the Fast Lane yesterday did super sneaky picks for the NFL playoff. If you guys had to say one team that you think could sneakily get into the NFL playoffs, who would you go with?
Well, I don't think anybody's sneakily getting in the AFC. I think the AFC is pretty much set in stone. So in the NFC, my 2 teams would be the Bears or the Panthers.
Oh,
because I think you're getting 2 teams in the NFC East. I think you're getting 2 teams in the NFC West, which leaves 3 teams in the other 2 divisions. And I think the Lions are going to win the North. I think the Bears could be a wild card, and I think the Panthers could be a wild card.
wait, did you say sneaky playoff team or sneaky Super Bowl team?
Playoff.
Oh, okay. I heard Super Bowl because that's what we did.
I
On
would not have said
Fast
either
Lane
of those
yesterday.
teams.
Yeah, that's why at first when I first heard that, then I heard you say those teams. The Bears are the sneaky playoff team for me. I think if Fields takes that step, he's got some weapons around him. I can see where they kind of back their way into the playoffs to where they get in and they're like that last wild card team. So I'd say Chicago.
So I've mentioned it before. I think you pick your team out of the NFC South. If you think that's Carolina, go for it. If you think that's Atlanta, go for it. But my sneaky team will come out of the NFC South because I think all of those teams are sneaky. Like, none of them are considered to be super good. My team, the one that I would bet on, would be Atlanta. I think Atlanta's going to be better than people expect this year. And it's because I'm not falling for all, like, the sexy skill guys. It's the offensive line, man.
Do you
They've
think 1 or
invested
2
in that
team
offensive line.
comes out of that division?
One.
Like, you
I
don't
don't
think a
think you
wild
get
card
2.
one gets from there?
No.
Because, see, I don't think the NFC South is, or the NFC North is.
That team, them.
Philly, Dallas, 1 team from the North, probably 2 teams from the NFC West, 1 team from the South, and then you've got 1 more spot left over. Maybe it is that second team coming out of the NFC North.
The team that wins the South may be below 500.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody in that
It did last
division
year.
is that's
It'd be the
good.
same thing
So,
again this year.
question for you real quick. Sneaky team that could get to the Super Bowl, because that's the one I thought you asked.
Is Dallas sneaky?
I'd say so. I think the only team that's favored in the NFC would be Philly.
Yeah, I would say Dallas.
I'm going to say the Lions.
I said Seattle was number 1 for me.
Like
that offense, that if they can stop the run this year on defense, I think they're the team for me.
Would you consider the Chargers to be sneaky?
I would, because like when you think AFC, who do you think? Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati.
Okay, so the Ravens would be sneaky, too. I might put
I
the
think so,
Ravens
too.
in that category.
Yeah. If you're going AFC, my teams would be Los Angeles Chargers and then Baltimore. If you're going the NFC, my sneaky team for a Super Bowl would be Dallas. I think Dallas is going to be really good this year. You got a healthy offense now. My
Still
big
have Mike
question for them
McCarthy.
is going to be, is that offensive line going to be able to stay healthy? If their offensive line stays healthy for the season, I feel pretty good about what they're going to be, and I hate the fact that Mike McCarthy is their head coach. Coming up next, what are the in-season call-ups that have felt for the Cardinals the way that this Masyn Winn call-up feels for them right now? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. Do you remember your childhood piggy bank, all the satisfaction that you felt as you were finally able to reap the rewards of all of that diligent savings? Well, with Truehold, you can access the biggest piggy bank you've ever had. It's your home's equity. You'll start enjoying the retirement that you plan for right now, and you don't even have to move. Here's how you do it. Truehold will buy your home for its best current value while it remains high, and you get to make all the cash now while you continue living in your home for as long as you'd like. Plus, Truehold will cover all the property taxes, the insurance, repairs, and maintenance too. And since they pay your home's current value in cash, that money is yours to do whatever you'd like with. So start enjoying your home's equity while it remains high by visiting Truehold.com, and you'll discover how much they'll buy your home for today based on its best current value. Call 1-855-300-9993 or just visit them at Truehold.com to find out the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's 1-855-300-9993 or visit Truehold.com.
He's a guy that could hit, 260, 270. He's probably always going to swing a good bit, so it's not going to be a ton of walks. And the power, like I said, is like anywhere from 15 to 25 homers, depending on exactly how his swing sort of settles. But it is like a twitchy, standout runner, defender, thrower. It's like elite at that level, which gives you a lot of margin for error.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That was Kylie McDaniel of ESPN.com talking with us last year about what Masyn Winn could be whenever he reaches the big leagues. Alex, that day has come. Masyn Winn has been called up. He will be wearing the number 0. We expect that he will be in the lineup tonight. We don't have that confirmed, but that's the anticipation. There is 45 days remaining in the season. This was the first day that they could call him up to retain his status as a rookie for 2024.
So do we make any
how that
connections?
timing? Yeah, it's funny how that timing ends up working out. The one thing that they do have to make sure is that he has fewer than 135 at-bats the rest of the way. That way he can continue to retain that rookie status for 24. If you're saying to yourself, man, the Cardinals are really doing some service time manipulation here, it actually works out for the player and for the team. The player, if he wins the Rookie of the Year next year, could get a bonus from that. The other thing is, he guarantees himself a year of service time next season. So this isn't just the Cardinals playing that service time manipulation game. It also works out well for the player as well.
Yeah, this is nothing like because the big one was Chris Bryant, right? That's where this has nothing like what Chris Bryant was.
It actually could end up backfiring a little bit on the Cardinals. Like, what they're doing now could end up losing a year of service time for them on the back end of his contract here in St. Louis. So it's the opposite of what I think a lot of people are criticizing the Cardinals for doing, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. I want to listen to two things, Alex. One from Masyn Winn, the other from Brad Thompson, about who this guy is as a player. Because these two things, these two statements are part of why I'm so excited about him making his debut tonight for the Cardinals. First, let's start with Brad Thompson. When he saw him in spring training, he left amazed by what this kid is capable of.
He's been my favorite player to watch. He's been the most entertaining baseball player maybe the Cardinals have, even with Jordan Walker in it, because of everything that he does on the field. What he does at shortstop, the rocket arm, he's hitting for power. He went Oppo Taco the other day. He's doing everything that you would love to see. He needs more reps in the minor leagues. So he needs to play. If he's not a part of the plan right now, and by the way, I think this spring has expedited your plans for him, and maybe he gets there a little quicker than you expect, but he can't be there.
Most exciting player at Cardinals camp, and that included Jordan Walker. Here's what Masyn Winn told us the other day, Alex, when we said, hey, what do you want Cardinals fans to know about you as a player? Here's what he had to say.
Since I got drafted, I mean, the fans to me have been, I can't, I'm a little biased. I think we do have the best fans in the world. But, as far as how they've treated me and how the support that they've put out, I mean, it's been fantastic. And, I want to put on a show each and every day for everyone that's watching, If they might only be able to come to one game, I want that one game. I want them to see something special out of Masyn Winn.
That's the attitude I want to hear from my kid that's coming up to the big league level. I want to hear him say, I want to put on a show for anybody that is coming out there that specific day. And that's what Masyn Winn has done down in the minors so far this season. So for me, this is about as excited as I've been for an in-season Cardinals prospect call-up. And as long as I've been around St. Louis, Alex Reyes got me this way. Nolan Gorman just isn't my specific type of player. Like, he's a lefty power hitter. That's exciting, don't get me wrong. I get really excited, though, about the athleticism.
It's
like
just slug, baby, slug. We like run, baby, run.
Exactly. It's just different. There's nothing wrong with either way.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Masyn Winn is much more in line with the type of player that I enjoy watching the most aesthetically. Who else, Alex, would you put on that list? Who else have you been super excited about in recent memory?
Mine's Oscar Taveras. I was covering the team for KMOX at the time, and when they called up Oscar Taveras, I was excited for it, but I could see the hype around the team was excited for it. Like the players in the clubhouse, you could tell that there was a different buzz around the fact that Oscar Taveras was joining them. The front office, they were excited about getting to see that. And the fans, even the media. I mean, MLB Network was like stationed in St. Louis waiting for that call-up for Oscar Taveras. So he was the one for me because all of the hype surrounding a number one prospect and a guy that you haven't seen this good since Albert Pujols in the minors, when you put that out there and then you call him up, and I forgot what it was, if it was August or September when they brought him up, but he was the one that I recall being most excited about when he got that opportunity.
Yeah, I would put Gorman in this list from last year when he got called up because I was excited about him. A guy that, at the time, remember, he was hitting for average in AAA too. Now, granted, you kind of assumed that wasn't going to carry to the big league level, but I'm a sucker for a guy that hits for a ton of power, and I would throw Taveras up in that conversation as well. I can remember I remember being at home when he got the call to the big leagues in 2014, and he was one of those prospects that had kind of the same hype that Walker has had in the recent years of, hey, this guy was putting up like Albert Pujols type numbers in the minor leagues, and like you hear that connection, you immediately get excited. So I would say those are probably the two prospects that I would say have the most recency in terms of this kind of excitement.
The one other guy that I would throw into this mix, and I think it gets slept on because of what came out of his career, unfortunately, is Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes has some massive hype surrounding his debut whenever he came up to the big leagues for the Cardinals. And early on, man, it looked incredible. That 2016 season when he started out, holy my God. I mean, he looked like everything that he had been expected to be. The strikeout rate was there. Now, he walked the world, and that always ended up kind of being the biggest issue for him. But he looked completely overwhelming. I remember that game that he had against the Cubs. I think it was his second game with the Cardinals back in 2016. It was just amazing to be able to watch what he could do as a pitcher, and it looked different than any of the other guys around that time that the Cardinals were calling up, because they had, Luke Weaver, Marco Gonzalez was around that time a little earlier, Jack Flaherty. It was that wave of pitchers that was coming up to the big leagues for the Cardinals, and Alex Reyes looked to be the best of that group. Now we get to the expectations, because we need to manage these appropriately, I think. When you think about what Masyn Winn is going to be for the Cardinals, the excitement level is there, and it's justified, because this guy is still 21 years old. He is the first franchise caliber shortstop that the Cardinals have developed at the minor league level in, 50 years potentially for them. But he's still a prospect. He's still very young. He was not an overwhelming hitter while he was down in the minor leagues. He was a pretty good hitter while he was down in the minor leagues. So we do have to manage expectations appropriately. When you guys think about what your expectations are right away from Masyn Winn, what does it look like for you?
My expectation is very low on the offensive side of it for Masyn Winn, because that's not what he was known for. I'm just expecting Masyn Winn to look like he's made strides to be able to be competent at the plate at the major league level, which is the strides that he's made over the last couple of years. I don't want to see this guy looking lost, and I'm not expecting him to be a guy that's going to be swinging everything. All of the high expectations for me with Masyn Winn are defense and his speed. Yep. Defense, I'm expecting this kid to look like he deserves to be at the major league level right now, and frankly, from everything I've seen in the minors, I don't know why it would be anything else.
Did you see him yesterday score from second on a single to left?
And what was it?
I love it.
It was when we interviewed him the day prior. He turned what should have been maybe a double, probably a single, into a triple. Yep. And that's Masyn Winn. And the quote that he had with us, talking about how when he gets on base, he wants to get his guys their stakes too, because he knows if he puts himself in running position, we're talking about somebody who gets you excited about stolen base potential, and we're talking about a guy that if a single goes right through the first and second baseman, Masyn Winn's going to be standing on third.
Yeah, I think my expectations, I think you're right on defensively. I think defensively I'm like, I know this is going to be a high bar, but I expect it to be kind of Gold Glove caliber the moment he gets up here, because that is one thing that will translate from AAA to the major leagues. His bat, I'm not having high expectations for it, not just this next month and a half, but next year when I assume he's going to be the starting shortstop. I think he's going to be around like a 230 to 240 hitter as he gets up here, and there's going to be a little bit of pop that you see, but he's going to be a guy that can extend some singles into doubles, and a guy that when he does get on base is going to be a threat to go from first to third, second to home on base hits. So that's kind of my expectations for him. The defense, I've got really high bar for him. Offense, it's more just like, hey, if you get out there and I see a little bit more than I'm expecting, that's an added bonus.
Can I give you guys the shortstops that had the most similar minor league profile, specifically in AAA, in their age 21 season to what we've seen so far this year from Masyn Winn? Would that be something that you're interested in?
Not a 12-18 on a Friday, man. I got to get through till 2 o'clock. Don't get me too excited.
So the guys that had the most similar profiles down in AAA, age 21 or younger, right? Shortstop position. Willy Adames, pretty similar to what we're seeing from Masyn Winn. This is offensively. Francisco Lindor. I don't think you should expect early career Francisco Lindor with the Cardinals,
Why
but
not?
he's on this list.
Give me that.
Gabriel Arias, who has not performed very well offensively so far with Cleveland. and Bo Bichette, who's been pretty darn good so far for Toronto as well. Those are the guys with the closest numbers offensively, age 21 or younger, to Masyn Winn at the shortstop position while they were in AAA.
That's a guy that deserves to wear number 0 if you're putting Bo Bichette numbers up. And again, I'm not expecting that to translate this season. Frankly, I don't know if I'm really expecting it next year. I'm expecting him to be a league average hitter. Maybe less than that.
I think below league average, honestly, offensively.
That's my expectations for him right now. And frankly, I don't expect him to be in a lot of those situations to where he's asked to perform. I think you're going to be talking about an 8 or a 9 hole hitter.
Agreed.
But I want to see the potential is there. And I think we're already seeing that in Memphis right now. The way he has performed and how he talked about he's adjusted his batting approach throughout the minors league system, that gives me the hope that this guy's going to translate into something capable for you. But you already know the defense is going to be there. And let's be honest, we lived 3 years of barely even 100 batting average with the Paul DeYoung.
I think early career Willy Adames is a really interesting comparison for Masyn Winn. Willy Adames, when he started out with the Tampa Bay Rays, 22, 23, 24 seasons, was a 265 hitter, didn't get on base a ton, about 30 or 320 on base percentage, and didn't have the power that we now know him to have in the big leagues. He hit some home runs, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as consistent in terms of the power as it ultimately became by the time that he got to Milwaukee. At that point, okay, you're talking about a guy that had a 480 slugging percentage, but early in his career it was closer to like 420 in terms of the slugging percentage. I think that's what you're hoping for with Masyn Winn's development. Early on, maybe that slug isn't the way that it will ultimately be, but I think 2-3 years from now, you hope that he develops into an offensive performer kind of similar to what Willy Adames did by the time that he got to Milwaukee year 3 and 4 in his big league career. Early on, I think you guys are absolutely right. It's about the speed, it's about the defense, and it's about making contact consistently. If you can do those 3 things, they're repeatable skills, that will help you reach the floor of what you can be, which is like a Tommy Edman caliber shortstop, and then the ceiling grows from there. Can you add some slugging percentage to it? Can you be a guy that becomes a little more selective at the plate and increases that on-base percentage? If you can do those things over time, now we can dream a little bit about him being a not only a franchise caliber shortstop, but one of the better ones in Major League Baseball. That is for a few years down the line. Early on, be good defensively, bring that speed, make contact, put the ball in play, see what happens because of that good speed that you bring to the table. Speaking of development, I think we're seeing a little bit of that, not just on the offensive side, but defensively from Jordan Walker. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
It's a broken bat, fly ball, right field side, falling quickly, and a sliding effort by Walker does finish off a 7-pitch inning for Adam Wainwright. No time to think about anything there. Nice play by the young Walker. Hatless to finish the second.
That's what it sounded like last night as Jordan Walker makes a nice defensive play in the outfield for the Cardinals. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Audio courtesy of Fox Sports. Guys, Jordan Walker, I think, is starting to show some signs of improvement in the outfield. This is not to suggest that he has suddenly become a Gold Glover out there. I don't think he's ever going to be a Gold Glove right fielder. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's probably not in Jordan Walker's future. Also, not expected to be a part of Jordan Walker's future. What you need from him is to be average. If he can go out there and he makes you feel in the outfield the same way that Alec Burleson does, in terms of catching the ball, and then you also have his speed where he's going to get to more of them, and his arm where he's going to be able to either put fear into opponents from taking the extra base or legitimately throw guys out as he did last night as well. All right, now we're working with something in the outfield along with the bat that he brings to the table. Alex, are you feeling better today about Jordan Walker's defense than you felt 2 or 3 months ago about Walker being in the outfield?
Absolutely. I think the one issue with Jordan Walker has just been the routes that he takes to balls. It's just you could tell that he's still learning that side of the game in terms of being a corner outfielder. You know that arm is going to play in that position. He's shown the ability to throw guys out and get balls before the speed can catch them. And we all know the actual foot speed of Jordan Walker. And the other side is the length of him. Like, he can get to balls. We've seen that the diving plays he can make as long as he holds on to them. So, yeah, I feel a lot more confident. I wasn't to the point where I was sitting here saying, oh, this team is bleeped if Jordan Walker's in right field next year, even at the beginning of the season, just because you figured it was going to be somewhat of a transition for a kid that was not comfortable in the outfield just getting those reps. I don't think he's going to be a Gold Glover. I think he could get closer to being a Gold Glover, though, the more timing, the more reps he takes in right field because of his arm and because of his foot speed in terms of being able to dive for balls that other guys might not be able to catch.
Yeah, see, I think he can get to Gold Glove caliber, but it's going to be like...
Can?
Yeah, but it's going to be 4 or 5 years before he can, because I think he's got the baseball smarts to where he learns the jump, to your point. I mean, he's going to have the closing speed to get to baseballs. He's going to have the arm to throw guys out, as we've seen. It's just a matter of getting better on defensive jumps. Like that, to me, that's the only thing that I see as the weakness for him right now, and it's routes.
Jumps and tracking.
Well, yeah, well, yes.
All of the stuff that makes you a good outfielder.
But I think all that gets better over time.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
And maybe I'm wrong. And again, if that doesn't improve, then yeah, there's no chance. But I think he can. I think I said this yesterday on the Fast Lane. I think by next year he's an average defender, and then the year after I think he's above average.
I don't even think he's playing the outfield in 3 years. He's your first baseman when Paul Goldschmidt's gone.
The reason why I find this to be important, and we've got some texts that basically say something to the effect of, guys, did you not see that he whiffed on a ball completely the other night? Come on. I did. There's still going to be plays like that. There's going to be plays like that next year where he just misjudges a fly ball, and it's going to look really ugly. And you're going to look back on it, and it's going to be kind of like drops in the NFL, where if you see a guy that just drops a wide open play in the NFL that should be a deep ball that goes for a touchdown, that sticks in your mind because it's one of those things where you always remember the worst plays more than you remember the really solid ones. What stood out to me about Jordan Walker lately is that he's making a lot more of those solid plays. And previously this year, a lot of those just became misplays. And if you can start, instead of getting like to 60% of the balls that should be caught 80% of the time. I know that's a lot of math, but there's a significant gap there between him and your average defender in right field. If you can get to like 80% of those balls that are caught by 80% of the players that are out there, man, now you're an average defender. That's what he was missing earlier in the season, and I think he's starting to get closer to that. Maybe earlier he was catching 50% of them, and now he's at 70% of them. It's a huge jump for a guy like Jordan Walker. And so as I see that in the progress that he's making, to your point, T-Bone, if he can become an average outfielder defensively next year, there's no reason to move him because then his bat plays well enough to be a corner outfielder, and it's just a more premium position than first base. It's harder to find guys that can play an adequate right field than it is to find guys that can play an adequate first base. First base is the last place that you put guys.
Tell that to Jose Martinez.
I hear you. He couldn't play anywhere. He was a DH. But you could have next year, like, would you rather have Alec Burleson playing first base or Jordan Walker playing first base? I think first base just kind of wastes the talents that he has. he is really fast and he has a cannon of an arm. Those are two talents that you don't really get to use very often at first base. Whereas Alec Burleson, man, he's a below average defender right now in left field, and there's really no reason to believe that there's more upside there. He's not fast, he has a pretty solid arm, but maybe not as much of a cannon as Jordan Walker does. I think he is a better profile as your future first baseman than Jordan Walker.
I guess to me it comes down to what the internal and potentially external options are going to look like 2 or 3 years from now in terms of growing through your system. What's your outfield versus your first base depth look like, or position players that could be your first base depth look like, and then what are the options via free agency to upgrade your team? Because at some point within the next 3 years, I know we're talking pitchers right now, but as you get older with Paul Goldschmidt and as these younger players start to develop more and become more big leaguers, that's when you cash in on bigger names on the free agent market to add to that complementary piece of going out there and trying to win a championship. What's more available to you once Paul Goldschmidt has gone? Now, maybe this is all a moot point and he's re-signed for 3 more years and you don't have to worry about it. But if he's not, what are the internal options looking like? Because I agree, you need Jordan Walker in the outfield, but do you have better options coming up that profile more as an outfielder, like Victor Scott?
And because I think Walker projects as an outfielder, because to me, he has looked better. I said this when he got moved to left earlier in the year for a while. I thought he started to look more comfortable there in left field. I think he's starting to look more comfortable in right. Honestly, that sliding catch that we returned with, I thought he looked calm running after that ball last night. Earlier in the year, when he was running after a ball like that, it would almost felt like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, here we go. And then he just wouldn't get to it.
Does he make you nervous, though, when he makes those basket catches and he's sliding?
Of course.
Because the one time where it bounced out of his glove, because that makes me nervous every time.
But again, that's to the point of remembering the bad play. Like, I wasn't concerned about it. I actually thought he got a really good jump on that ball last night.
Oh, yeah,
and again, to me, he felt really calm in that play. I thought he robbed the home run. He just got unlucky and his glove hit the wall coming down with it.
Yeah, people have brought that up as if it was a terrible play. I think they oversold that on the broadcast last night.
Yeah, John Smoltz made that one worse than it was.
That was a really difficult play that I don't expect an average defender to make, and he at least kept it in. Like, that's the biggest thing is, can you keep that ball in? You potentially save your team a run by keeping that ball in. Now, he came around to score, so it didn't matter either way, but he helped out his pitcher a little bit there. Would you like him to catch it? Sure. And Lars Nootbaar, I think, probably does. But Lars Nootbaar is an above-average defender in right field. You could consider him to be a good defender in right field. Walker's not there yet. 2 years from now, maybe he does make that catch.
And to your question of, like, well, it depends on what the future holds at first, I think right now, if I had to project, like, 3-4 years from now, and Goldie's retired as a Cardinal or Goldie's just not here in St. Louis, I think Burleson's the guy at first. I think Burleson's the everyday first baseman.
He looked good over there defensively the other day. It's small sample size.
He's been good from the small sample size we've seen. And I think the outfield is some combination of Scott probably in center with Nootbaar in left and Walker in right. And I think if Walker continues to progress like I think he's going to, that's a really good outfielder. Then you've got Burleson, who at best probably looks like not at best, but looks like a average to above average first baseman if he ends up going there. And again, that's 3 to 4 years. I expect Goldschmidt's probably going to get an extension. That feels like the move. And you don't have to worry about it because you got a Gold Glover there for the next 3-4 years.
Final thing that I wanted to get to here, we'll get to NFL quick hitters on the other side. You mentioned center field and Victor Scott. I think that's the last position that the Cardinals need to fill for their core of the future. And I'm talking like immediate future, not 5 years down the road, because it's impossible to predict what happens 5 years from now. If you asked me 3 years ago who's part of this core, Dylan Carlson would have been a part of that conversation, and Lars Nootbaar would not have been a part of the conversation. So things change rather quickly. Center field's the last spot, because as you look at it, whether it's Herrera or Contreras behind the plate, you've got that spot filled. First base, third base, we know. Second base is Gorman. Shortstop is now Masyn Winn. Left field is probably going to be Lars Nootbaar long-term. Right field looks to be Jordan Walker long-term. The one position I can't really say that about with any certainty is center field. I think it's going to eventually be Victor Scott. But he's still a ways away from the big leagues. We've still got some time before we find out what he really is as a fully formed player. I am very curious to see what the Cardinals decide to do at that spot going into next year. They may approach it the way that they did with shortstop this year, where they say, hey, we've got Victor Scott coming. We really like him as a player. We'd rather not block him with a free agent. We'd rather go with Lars Nootbaar getting some opportunities out there. Maybe Tommy Edman gets some opportunities out there, and we can fill that spot until Victor Scott takes it, the way that they did this year with Paul DeJong and Tommy Edman at shortstop instead of paying a bunch of money to fill it. But if there is somebody that's available either in free agency or on the trade market, I would be curious to see if they try to fill that this offseason.
I'm looking at the free agent market, and unless Cody Bellinger goes in a couple of years, but don't think you're going to be worrying about that.
He's going to get a big-time contract.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not. I mean, Luis Roberts got a club option in 26, but I would imagine they're picking that up.
The guys you would target would be Kiermaier or Bader. Those are probably the two. And it's because it's a stopgap solution.
Yep.
It's a 1-2 year solution until Scott is ready to go. And like I think their plan, and this is where I kind of hope they don't go, but I understand what their thinking is. I think their plan is Nootbaar's in center, and we've got Burleson or Donovan in left. But I think you're average in center, you're at best average in right if Walker develops to that, and then you're average in left. I think you can probably, if you can bring in a good defensive center fielder, you can be above average in center, above average in left, and be average in right field. That's why I think they need to go get a center fielder and use that as the stopgap and push Lars back to a corner. Because otherwise, I question the outfield defense, which, as we know, was a serious issue for this team earlier this year. Now, maybe some of that gets masked a little bit if you go add swing and miss, but I think they do need to find a stopgap guy that's a better center fielder and push Lars to a corner this offseason.
I would be curious to see what this looks like with Tommy Edman. I think he's going to get some serious opportunities in center field over the next few days with Lars Nootbaar on the injured list now and with Masyn Winn officially making the jump to the big leagues. So I'll be curious to see what it looks like with Tommy Edman in center field, because he could be that guy. I know it sounds crazy because we think of him as a shortstop, but if Tommy Edman became available this offseason and he played really well down the stretch for somebody as a center fielder, we'd be saying, hey, maybe you try him out on a one-year deal in center field. That could effectively be what they decide to do next year. Just depends on how he looks in center field down the stretch, because last time we saw it, it looked really good for him. I'm not going to lie. Coming up next, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals fell to the Mets yesterday 4-2, and they are back in action tonight. 7:15 will be first pitch as Zach Thompson gets the start for St. Louis. And late last night, the Cardinals announced that they've selected the contract of their top prospect, Masyn Winn, as Lars Nootbaar goes to the IL. And news out of the NFL, Jadeveon Clowney is signing with the Baltimore Ravens. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. So, guys, there's a couple pieces of news that I want to get to here. The first is the Washington Commanders. They have named their quarterback for this season.
Fantasy football pick number 1, round 1. Tell me.
Not round 1, but I would actually, if you're in a super deep league with 2 quarterbacks and you need a backup plate,
stop.
I'm not watching any Washington Commander games this year, so I would not pick him.
Sam Howell has been named the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders. I would take a flyer on him late in your fantasy draft. I'm not kidding. I think when people see Sam Howell, they don't immediately think like, oh, this guy's going to be a big-time running threat. He was a really good runner in college, like legitimately a really good scrambler for North Carolina. And I know that people will laugh at this because it didn't go well for him in his final season. He was a really good player as a junior. Came back, and then a bunch of his teammates left. He didn't look as good as a senior. But I think Sam Howell's going to be an interesting player to watch this season.
I think Sam Howell is going to be a bust this season.
What the hell's wrong with
His
you?
final year at North Carolina, he rushed for 850 yards and 11 touchdowns.
Yeah, we call that college football.
Yeah, there's some value in that as a fantasy football quarterback. Not as a
in
real
college
quarterback.
football.
Yeah,
I
he
think
stinks.
He does stink.
He's bad. You know what they're doing? I know they're saying,
He
oh,
threw
we're competing.
95 touchdowns and 20
I don't
interceptions in
care.
college.
Not in the
stinks.
NFL. He stinks.
He might not be bad.
In the crappy ACC. No, he stinks.
The team stinks.
You know the tweet I saw today? QB2 Jacoby Brissett, a.k.a. starter week 4.
AKA starter week 2.
Hey, Sam Howell was a 5th-round pick. He might end up being okay.
Yeah, stinks.
Take him in your fantasy league. I can't wait to manage against
This is
you.
why BK lost his fantasy league last
All
year.
right, enough of you guys. The next piece of news
listen to
around the
non-playoff
NFL.
guy.
This guy's actually shown some legitimate NFL ability, although he's been hurt most of the
God,
time.
he's going to say Tommy DeVito with the Giants.
Jadeveon Clowney has officially signed with the Baltimore Ravens.
QB1 week 5.
This feels to me like a match made in heaven. Clowney is going to be like their 3rd or 4th pass rusher. He's going to come in specifically to help them against the run as well. I like Jadeveon Clowney. I've always been a big fan of his game. Guys, do you think this changes at all your expectations for the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, it changes my expectations. It's just a matter of what 6 weeks is Jadeveon Clowney playing. Is it first 6 weeks, last 6 weeks? But, I mean, look, part of me is sleeping on the Ravens a little bit just because I get all excited about them because of Lamar Jackson and what they have, and then it just doesn't live up to expectations. But they got a real legit team this year, and their defense was the best part of their team last year, and you just added a former 1st overall pick. So if he stays healthy and is anything like the Clowney of years past, that's going to really benefit that Ravens team, especially if it's deep in the season.
Yeah, I don't know how much it really changes expectations for me. Maybe it's like another win.
Today.
Well, no, you just mentioned he's like their 3rd or 4th best pass rusher.
this is where
I'm not
Tanner
going to
loses me.
oversell it like, oh,
okay.
Well, they went from wild card to Super Bowl contender. No, I think he helps. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here pretending he's not going to help
I like
them.
to manage against you.
Yeah, well, if I'm competing against Sam Howell over here. But I think he helps out Baltimore. I do like the signing, but I don't know if it changes my expectations for them.
That's fair.
I think if he goes to Baltimore, he's not relied upon, which means he's going to stay healthier for you.
That's a big part of
Yeah.
this. Is I think he could be a really solid complementary piece. I think people hear Jadeveon Clowney and they think number 1 overall pick, like these high expectations. I don't think that's who he is as a player. He never really lived up to those expectations.
He's the Nail Yakupov of the NFL.
Well, no. He's a guy that comes in. You like him as a part of your rotation. I think it just reaffirms what we thought about the Ravens previously. Going to be a really solid team this year. If that offense lives up to expectations, they could win 11, 12 games, and it shouldn't come as a shock to anybody. All right, last thing that I wanted to get to in NFL quick hitters. The Ringer had a piece earlier today breaking down the best pass catching core. So wide receiver, running back, and tight end. The best pass catching cores in the NFL. Their top 5 was as follows, Alex. The Bengals at number 1 makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Mixon, but really it's about those top 3 wide receivers. The Eagles were number 2. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift, Dallas Goedert. Really good pass catching core. We know that. The rest of the list in the top 5. The San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Minnesota Vikings. Guys, is there anybody that they did not have in their top 5 that you think deserves to be mentioned in that category? Upper level, upper echelon, pass catching course. Wide receiver, running back, tight end.
I thought their 6 and 8 should be in the conversation for number 5. The Chargers and the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins take a massive step back on the tight end side of things, but I think they're
And everything other than their top 2 wide receivers.
But their top 2 wide receivers are better than a lot of top 3 wide receivers on some of these others. I actually think people are sleeping on the Chargers in terms of what they've got in terms of depth. Now, all of this relies on Keenan Allen being healthy, but to have that, Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer and Austin Eckler, who's one of the best running backs in terms of running and pass catching, I think the Chargers should definitely be in the top 5.
Yeah, I thought Chargers top 5. I think the Cowboys one, they kind of slipped on a little bit there. They had them at 7. The other one for me, Jacksonville. I thought Jacksonville was high at 13. And I mean, you look
Calvin
at what
Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, really solid top 3.
Cleveland.
Travis Etienne,
Evan
and
Ingram was
Evan
great.
Ingram. Get out of here. 13 with that group? You're telling me you'd rather have the Cleveland Browns group of pass
They had the
catchers?
Falcons above.
Okay,
but all of them. Like, sure, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, great. All of them?
I actually identified the Falcons as a team that I would have higher. I think 10 is low for the Falcons. Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London as your top 3. That's the building blocks, right? You mentioned with the Dolphins is basically your top 2 and then everybody else. I like that top 3 quite a bit. Matt Collins is a really solid, number 3 pass catcher. Cordero Patterson is a really nice backup running back. And Jonnu Smith is a totally solid, movable piece as a backup tight end. I think the Falcons should be ranked higher than this in this category. I would rather have the Falcons pass catchers than I would probably the Cowboys pass catchers.
Would also have the Lions higher. I don't know how the Lions were 15.
So I think that's really about their lack of depth. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, love it. Who else is proven in their pass catching core?
There's not a whole lot else there.
Sam Laporta might be good. Jameer Gibbs might be good. Jamison Williams we've seen for 2 games in the NFL. Their number 2 wide receiver right now is Marvin Jones.
I think the potential there, though, that if you click on those, are all going to be significant pieces.
They could be top 5 this time next year.
Yeah.
If those guys all live up to expectations. But going into the season, it's kind of hard to put them much higher.
And I guess where we differ on the Falcons is I think Pitts is a guy that should be better
for the Falcons.
Yeah, and Pitts coming off such a disappointing year last year, and I know he dealt with injuries too, but even before injuries, he was not that impressive
Only
last
the Falcons
year.
had
And
Sam Howell.
that's why I think I'm lower. If they did.
That'd be a Super Bowl
Are you
team.
drafting Ritter this year too? Are you going to go with the 1-2 punch of Howell and Desmond Ritter?
I've drafted a lot of them in best ball.
You're like my brother-in-law. All he does is draft either Denver Bronco or Ohio State alums.
No, to be fair,
this team sucks,
I'm
man.
drafting them in the final round of my best ball draft. So it's not like I'm getting these guys at the 3rd round and I'm taking them over Jalen Hurts or something like that. I'm not ridiculous.
Never forget, my buddy drafted Sam Bradford the year that he was traded away from the Rams because he was a Oklahoma guy. I'm like, well, this team sucks.
My last round quarterbacks that I'm taking in best ball are Ryan Tannehill, Sam Howell, and Desmond Ritter. Those are the guys that I'm getting most often.
I can see, do I go with Carr or do I go with Ritter?
Get out of here. I'm not doing it.
Do I push and go with Trask from Tampa Bay?
No, absolutely
Stetson
not.
Bennett from the Rams.
No.
Oh, let me tell you, they're excited about him.
He had an arm sleeve on the other day, and it looked good on the sideline.
He's 40. He's a geriatric. He's a rookie. Get out of here. Coming up next, let's dive into the jump drawer here on 101 ESPN. growing up. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. What was your
Co-host of
dream?
BK and Ferrari.
I'm guessing it wasn't this. He settled.
I did.
Did you have something where you're like, I want to be a firefighter when I grow up? T-Bone, you wanted to be a tennis pro,
T-Bone's still
right?
not growing up yet.
No, not a tennis pro. I wanted to be a baseball pro for sure.
Okay.
When did that
He
simmer?
saw Jose Altuve. He's like, that's me. That is my
When
future.
did that
I'm
hope
tiny like
fade
Jose.
away? His grandpa was like, Pee Wee Reese was a great baseball player.
Probably middle school.
That makes sense.
Was it because you realized that you couldn't do it, or you just figured it's not worth it? I'm seriously acting.
I couldn't hit worth a damn.
Really?
Like, I was a field first guy, and I played in the.
loved watching T-Bone.
I played middle infield and outfield, and a little bit of catcher.
See,
And I didn't throw hard either. Like I had Waino velo in middle school.
I actually only had one
He was
time.
Greg Garcia.
Mark Gridzolonic.
Yeah, I love it.
Hitting for that cycle, baby.
I was Brendan Wright.
I think there was only
About the average.
one era that I wanted to be a pro athlete. It was when I played basketball in like middle school, and I wanted to be that, and then that like faded away immediately.
I thought I was going to be the next Allen Iverson at one point in my life. Or the headband, or the
see
long
you with
socks.
dreadlocks. See you with dreadlocks. Gotta grow your hair
Yeah,
out.
cornrows.
Oh yeah, that's
Not
what I meant.
dreads.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I've never seen you even like play basketball, so I have no idea.
nowadays terrible. I was fine growing up. I wasn't like a great player, but I was
feel
fine.
like
I played
I
on
got
an
shin
AAU team
splints
for
now.
a year.
So yeah, I was good when I was younger, but now I got shin splints. I don't know.
Just recurring shin splints from walking.
They're 24/7.
From walking up the stairs into the building?
Or when I'm walking,
Damn.
or when I'm walking from my couch to the refrigerator, then back to the couch. That's where they
Man,
usually kick
I'm kind of
in.
looking forward to my 30s.
Yeah,
that
no, it's
sounds
not fun,
tough.
Reason why I ask is because there was a story that came out from 96K The Rock down in, I believe this is Tampa Bay.
Say it again with a little more attitude.
96K The Rock down in Tampa Bay.
That's good, man.
I wonder why you're in this radio thing.
Sabrina Verlice of Tampa Bay had a dream. When she was just 14 years old, her mom, former exotic dancer, gave her some of her old costumes to try on. That is when the Tampa woman knew she wanted to follow into her mother's footsteps. So at the age of 14, she had a dream.
Good for her.
I'm going to be an exotic dancer. Alex, 6 years later, this just took place recently.
Her and her mom danced on stage together.
She fulfilled that dream. She bought a pole, a pair of heels, and 2 dancer outfits, and after practicing for 2 days, she auditioned at a club in Clearwater. Her audition became her first night's work. She took home $300. Now 23 years old, she works 10 to 25 hours a week on the pole, on the stage, and in private rooms, making up to $10,000 per night.
She only made $300 on her first night.
Here's to Sabrina for living out her lifelong dream the way that Alex, T-Bone, and myself never could or would. Here's to you. Cheers to you, Sabrina.
If I had a body like Sabrina, I would dance.
No, you wouldn't.
No, I would. Not
if you were
afraid of it.
guaranteed to get $10,000,
I would dance no matter what. I just don't have the body for it, so I couldn't do it. I got the moves.
Your body is a wonderland.
I do. My wife says I look a lot like Channing Tatum when I dance.
No,
Really?
you'd get
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
If you
huh?
got shin splints from walking, you'd hurt yourself
You know
doing
what?
What at the
this.
station would be most likely to make 10 grand in a night?
Tanner,
as a
you don't
stripper?
use your shins to dance, baby. You use your hips to dance.
I should clarify, as a man at the station, because I'm not trying. Who would be most likely to make $10,000 in a night?
Jamie.
I was going to say, in popularity, name recognition, Jamie and BT's got that covered. But let's just say that you don't know who anybody is.
Yeah, just based on what they're willing to put out there. It's still Jamie.
I'd be willing to put a lot out there for money, so
I think it's still Jamie Rivers.
Yeah.
And I think
He's got no
second is
shame.
Marshy.
I'm in the top 5
I think
conversation.
Marshy is a sleeper candidate on this
I
one.
think you're sleeping on me. I'm top 3 in that
don't think I am.
conversation. I think you're sleeping on me.
Dude, I know you don't use your shins for dancing,
Yeah,
but
you've got shin splints from walking.
you would get hurt.
Believe me, I use the other areas
I
for
like
dancing.
the Marshy one. I could see Marshy.
Marshy would get after
it,
it, man.
I could see Jackson getting after
I
it
think
too.
so, too.
I think my top 3.
Absolutely
You know
not.
who might be third on this list?
I hope we're not thinking the same name.
Rockio.
Oh, okay.
There's certain people that would see him and say, I've got a Wreck-It Ralph thing.
I'm gonna wreck it, man!
And they would just have him do that all night long.
I'm
Just
gonna wreck it! Comes out in his suspenders, nothing else on, and just bum, 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 bum. I'm gonna wreck it!
I did not need that image.
He would really get into character.
Yeah, he would.
I could see Marsh and And Rocky.
When Marshby is fixing Felix?
Part of the dance is it's not a curtain that opens up, it's just a brick wall, and then a fist comes through. Ah!
Somebody said casual Friday, huh? Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Alex is off next week.
You guys
He's
are sleeping on me.
mode. T-Bone's been working on the fast lane. He's got it all figured out. And I'm just here.
Coming up. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Someone just sent the video of what's-his-face from American Pie dancing in his bedroom and said, BK, be like. Oh, my God. Tanner doesn't get that reference, but
No.
man.
Have you ever seen American Pie? I don't know if it holds up.
Oh, that could not be. Well, it is
I
made
wouldn't
today.
think that it would hold up.
In terms of humor?
Yeah, I mean, humor
yeah.
ages poorly, man.
No, but that does not, man. I'm telling you that.
American Pie. When
I
was this
think that
released?
I still watch it today, and it still cracks me up. Because
Does that say more about you or the movie?
I think it says about the movie. Because it's the
It was
era
made in 99.
Yeah,
The year I was born.
being like high school guys. Yeah, I think that still holds up.
It says a lot about Dan Levy.
No, Eugene Levy.
Would you old guys start using more common references?
It says a lot about Eugene Levy. That he went from that to creating Schitt's Creek.
Yeah,
Quite the come up for our guy Eugene.
he was like in those whatchamacallit? Why can't I think of it? The Whose Line Is It Anyway? What is that? Where they create the stuff off the top of their heads. Why am I improvised?
Oh, improv.
He was improv in Canada. That's like where he got famous.
Oh, he's a stud.
Yeah, I've always loved Eugene Levy. Nobody is funnier just in terms of looking at the individual. He can say nothing and you laugh. That's Eugene Levy.
T-Bone, watch American Pie
And
tell
then
us if it holds
Stifler.
up.
Freaking Stifler gets me every time.
Last movie you guys recommended me wasn't very good.
I can't
No, we
promise you that
recommended
this,
Big Daddy.
I
You
want
didn't
to
watch
know
it.
up front.
I did. It was not good.
This one I can't promise you is going to live up to any sort of hype, but I think it's worth watching. Have you seen Wedding Crashers?
I've not.
Oh, that one you got to watch.
Your guys.
That's just the 90s version of Wedding Crashers is American Pie.
You guys failed on your one
Kinda.
recommendation.
I mean, it's essentially the same
It's a
thing.
coming of age movie.
Yeah. I still think that holds up because it is so funny.
Coming up next, what does Masyn Winn need to do in order to elevate himself beyond what the last two shortstop classes were? Can he make it where it was not only the right decision, but clearly the correct decision for the Cardinals to stay out of the last two shortstop free agent classes? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
If you really like one of these shortstops and you've decided that having production from shortstop in 2023 is paramount, you go get a shortstop and you trade Masyn Winn for something else.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That was Keith Law on with us last year going into the free agency market, talking about how or if Masyn Winn plays into the Cardinals' decision-making process when it comes to the free agent market. Well, it did. They decided to stay out of that market, along with, an unwillingness to spend, because that's what they do. Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson all went on to make at least $175 million on the open market, and they've had mixed degrees of success so far this season. For the majority of them, I would say it's fair to call them underwhelming this year relative to expectations. Last year, though, there was another free agent market. Corey Seager, Trevor Story, Javi Baez, Carlos Correa were all available in free agency. Now, 3 of those 4 have not worked out. Carlos Correa, of course, got back to the market, and then this year he's been super underwhelming. Javi Baez has been awful. And Trevor Story has basically been unavailable since the moment that he signed that deal with Boston. Corey Seager, rough first year, but this year has been excellent for the Texas Rangers and is a big part of why they're competing now. Alex, when you think about Masyn Winn and what he needs to be for the Cardinals in order to justify them sitting out of the last 2 free agent markets when it comes to the shortstop classes, what does that look like for you?
To me, I think it's simple. Don't be a up and down player. Meaning, don't be you got to go back to Memphis to work on, back to the big leagues, back to Memphis, back to the big leagues. You're going to have to stay consistent, because if your defense stays up here and let's say you're just a 225 hitter, I still think that makes people feel better about not going to the market. Sure, you want that elite bat, but I think you've got those bats elsewhere to cover for Masyn Winn. Your defense and your base running and the speed, frankly, you locking down the shortstop position in terms of knowing that you are going to be a Gold Glove player there for this team moving forward, to me, would make me say I don't really care about that market, because I've got the bats that you were going to try and get with those shortstops. I've got those bats in Goldschmidt, Arenado, Wilson Contreras, Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker. Now I just need somebody to hold down that position, stay healthy, and not ride the train back to Memphis. If he can stay at the big leagues and just be this Gold Glove shortstop and be average in terms of a hitter, that's a win in my book.
I think for me, he's going to have to be a Gold Glove caliber defender, and he's going to have to be about a 250 hitter that's probably got I'd probably say about 15 to 20 home run power. I think the power is going to be a thing for him in terms of why you will judge him on it, because all those shortstops that signed were guys that were supposed to be middle of the order impact bats, and I don't think Wynn's going to be that. But I think a lot of people will look at it. I mean, we talk about great defense. Bader was a great defensive player here in St. Louis. Harrison Bader drew the short straw and was very heavily criticized until he left town. So I think Winn could potentially fall into that, where fans look at him and go, wait, this is what we passed up on the shortstop market for, which I think is unfair. I think if he's a guy that hits 250, shows some pop, and plays elite defense, then yeah, it was well justified, because he's under club control for 6 years and making league minimum.
Does that have to happen immediately? You're talking about the power, or are we talking 3-4 years down the road?
I think 3-4 years down the road, because I think by that point you kind of expect him to kind of grow into his body more. And by year, I'd say
I was just making sure you're not saying immediately he has to be a guy that's hitting 15 home runs, hitting 250, and
15
playing
home runs.
I was like, damn,
in a month and a half, 15
all-star.
bombs.
But see, what I would say with Bader in the comparison you had there is people were hoping Bader was going to be that bat because they desperately needed more bats. I don't think you need bats the way that you did with Bader.
Let's be honest. The thing with Bader that people hated was the strikeouts. And that is something that at least you hope won't be there to the same degree with Masyn Winn. I would say the overwhelming likelihood is Masyn Winn ends up being a worse hitter at the big league level than what Harrison Bader was when it comes to OPS plus, right? You look back at Harrison Bader in his first 4 seasons, the full seasons with the Cardinals, he was a slightly above league average hitter. He's a 101 OPS plus. Do I think that the same will be true for Masyn Winn? I don't know. I would say the over-under of him being an average hitter at the big league level, probably the projection systems would have the under. They would probably say he's going to be a 90 OPS plus, which is just 10% below league average. And this is why I wanted to bring up Dansby Swanson. Guys, Dansby Swanson was one of the top prospects in all of Major League Baseball. He was the #1 pick in the Major League Baseball draft. He gets called up by Atlanta. right around this time of the season for Atlanta in 2016. The rest of the way puts together some really solid numbers. Hits 300 for them and ends up, it's like, okay, this is our shortstop of the present and the future. Next year, plays the full season. You know what he did? Terrible. 235 hitter, 310 on base percentage, and only slugged 325. He finished that season with 6 home runs, 25 RBIs, despite the fact that he was playing every single day. He was 30% below league average for them in his rookie season. Nobody would sit here and say today Dansby Swanson was a bad player for the Braves, but that first year went really poorly. And then the next year, 13% below league average and OPS below 700. And then finally, at the age of 25, he had a 90 OPS plus, which was considered a good breakout season for him at 750 in terms of his OPS that year. That might be the kind of trajectory we're talking about with Masyn Winn. It might take 3 or 4 years before he becomes like even an average major league hitter. Are we okay with that? Are we going to be sitting here at that point in time and saying, man, the Cardinals really missed out by not going out and getting into the free agent class if he takes a very similar path to what Dansby Swanson did?
I think he is, as long as the defense plays there, because you've got the offense. You're not worried about the offense, the production from Masyn Winn, if it's up there, if it's not up there. If your defense is Gold Glove caliber from start to finish next year, I'm not complaining about it, and I don't think anybody should be complaining about it, because what's the biggest complaint this season? It's pitching and it's defense. Well, you figured out defense if Masyn Winn's the type of player that you are, so people shouldn't be complaining about it if it takes that long.
Yeah, I don't know if people should be, but I think people will complain about it, because you passed up on 2 generation-type free agent classes in the shortstop market, and if you get a guy that's below league average offensively, I think people will look at that as a negative. Sure, I think his defense is going to play. Like, I have no concerns about that. But I think people will look at the offense, and I think that will be something that will become a sticking point at some point for him, if those are what his numbers are. Because like with Swanson, there was not the free agent class that there was when Swanson was coming up through the Braves system. The Cardinals put all their chips in on Masyn Winn and said, this is the guy. We're not going to go get a superstar caliber shortstop on the free agent market. So I just think that puts pressure on him from the fan base perspective. I think that will be something that can potentially come up.
So I think it's twofold. One, I think it shouldn't play against Masyn Winn. And 2, I think it has to do with what they're able to do with that money that they saved. Because if they ended up going out there and spending $25 million per year on the shortstop market, we can disagree with this, but I think it would have taken them out of the top of the starting pitching market this offseason. Instead, now, because you have Masyn Winn making less than $1 million next season, you have the flexibility to go out there and sign an Aaron Nola. You have the flexibility to go out there and sign Yamamoto, or maybe even multiple of these guys at or near the top of the free agent class. That plays into this as much as Masyn Winn's numbers do. If you go out there and don't sign one of those starting pitchers, and you have Masyn Winn making that small salary next year, well, then people are going to be furious, justifiably so. If you go out there, though, and you make the big splash, and part of the reason why you're able to make that splash is because you didn't dive into the top of the market last year at the shortstop, or 2 years ago at the shortstop market, that's where people, I think, will start to say, okay, I kind of get it now. It makes sense to me that you opened up that flexibility for you to be able to spend elsewhere. So really what it should come down to is not just Winn versus that shortstop, whoever you wanted them to go out and get. Swanson, Trey Turner, Seager, whoever your shortstop was that you loved. It should be Masyn Winn plus that starting pitcher. What can they do that you would have otherwise just received that from with that shortstop that you signed? And we'll see. We'll see what they end up going out there and do. But it's incomplete right now before we can really make that assessment.
Yeah, if you don't allocate the money into areas that you need to upgrade because you are saving it with all of these rookie contracts, well, then you're doing a disservice to this roster. Like, if I'm Nolan Arenado, yeah, I'm pissed off. Like, great, Masyn Winn's here. And, yeah, we've got Walker and Gorman and Donovan and Nootbaar. But what are you doing with the other money? Because if you're just going to hold on to it because, well, we got all these young players coming through the system, you're not benefiting yourself. That's what other teams have success with. They get the young players, and then they allocate that money to areas that need the upgrade. So Masyn Winn's great, but if you sit there and say, well, we don't need to spend the money because we've got these other guys, and Masyn Winn's taking the shortstop position, well, then to me, you've kind of failed in this position.
Yeah, well, I'm with you there. If you don't spend the money, then yeah, you didn't do what you were supposed to do as a front office and help supplement the team the right way. But I think it is a good point. I think when you have to think about it in the long-term view is, okay, we're able to save money here. This is where we can go spend here. And I hope the conversation doesn't change even if they do spend that money, that pitcher gets hurt.
Yeah.
And I hope it doesn't change because they did what we wanted them to do. They went out and they signed a starter, but if Nola gets hurt after signing a contract or Snell deals with injuries after signing a contract, sure, that's on the Cardinals somewhat, but it's not really their fault to blame. They went out and spent the money like we wanted to. The guy just got hurt, and that happens with pitching.
That's T-Bone. He's Alex. I'm BK. Coming up next, how are the Cardinals this bad with the bases loaded? It doesn't make any sense to me, and it's something that should be fixed by next year. We'll discuss it next year on 101 ESPN.
shortstop. Lindor tries to get to second and safe there, but then he came off the base. He ran through it, and the out made.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That's what it sounded like on Fox last night, as it's become a theme. The Cardinals leave the bases loaded once again. Guys, the Cardinals have taken 109 plate appearances this season with the bases loaded. In those 109 plate appearances, they are batting 182. They have an OPS of 554. That is the worst batting average with the bases loaded in the National League. It is the second worst OPS with the bases loaded in the National League. Somehow, the Marlins have been even worse.
That offense is consistent.
Alex, I don't know how or why this has happened, but it's become a thing. Kara's mom is staying with us right now to watch the little guy at night with us, help us out with the overnights. He doesn't like to sleep. And she said the other day, she's not a big baseball fan. She'll watch the occasional game, especially when she's at our place. She said, why do they always leave the bases loaded?
Fair question.
And I said, I don't know.
Great question.
It is a great point. They leave a lot of runners on. Last year, just to get rid of this, because I know that's coming on the text line, guys, it's because the Cardinals aren't clutch. They don't have clutch players on the team. Well, then how were they so good in these situations last year?
Who did it last year?
It's the same guys.
They had Pujols and Yachty last year.
Yeah.
And Corey Dickerson.
Yeah, Corey Dickerson. Okay.
And Juan Yepez.
And Juan Yepez. The man hit the home runs in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that could hit.
Now he's stuck in Memphis.
With the bases loaded last year, the Cardinals hit 330.
Wow.
And they had an OPS of 875. Those were both top three numbers in the National League. So they went from a top three team in the National League with the bases loaded last year to a bottom two team in the National League with the bases loaded this year. Those situations determine a lot when it comes to your offensive productivity. We're talking about 110 plate appearances with the bases loaded. Talk about some ribby opportunities that are left on the board. Alex, is this just them getting unlucky? Is this a situation where they're suddenly bad with the bases loaded? How do you explain it?
I don't know how to explain it. I would imagine that this is more luck, but it's hard to say it's luck when your offense has been one of the top 10 offenses in Major League Baseball this season, but not with bases loaded. Like, I know people say it, and we get upset sometimes about the clutchness, but that might be a factor into all of this. I do think some of the time you're talking about running into some luck with the bases loaded, but I also look at it as if you're an offense that is consistent from start to finish as one of the top 10 and you can't hit with bases loaded, there's some type of underlying issue there that we don't know about.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything to deal with clutchness because, again, it wouldn't have been a thing. It would have been a thing last year and previous years. That would be a lack of clutch, quote unquote. I don't think it's that. I don't know if it's bad luck. I think it's just whatever reason it's not working. It's a one-off. I don't think this is a serious concern moving forward for the Cardinals. Now, if they struggle with bases loaded again next year, then we're having a different conversation. But for whatever reason, this is just one of those oddities of baseball to where, for whatever reason, there is one year where one stat just makes no sense. And this is one of them for the St. Louis Cardinals. Or, and we didn't even mention this, could be the lack of no Jeff Albert here.
Oh,
that is true. What are the bases loaded situation for the New York Mets this season?
They're bad in every situation.
Okay, well, that crosses off the Jeff Albert. Do you know the players individual with the bases loaded situations?
I do. Who do you want to know?
Of course you do. Oh, well, stupid question by me. The man dove into it deep last night.
What's their expected batting average?
I can't speak to that.
What's the Woe
I
Bacon?
can give you some of the bad batting averages with the bases loaded this year.
Can I
Tommy
guess?
Edman, 185. Go ahead.
Figured Edmund would be there.
Okay, well.
I bet Gorman's high. I feel like for some reason he's been there.
Yep, he's batting 166 with the bases loaded
Contreras
this
has
season.
got to be up there.
He's batting 166 as well with the bases
Goldie.
loaded this
Jordan
season.
Walker had it last night.
Jordan Walker is batting 125 with them loaded.
Well, that's because he can't get the ball in the air.
Probably.
Goldie.
Goldie's actually been really good. 300 with the bases loaded so far this season.
What about
Wasn't he at the beginning of the season
been good too.
bad with runners in scoring position?
He was. But this is not with the runners in scoring position. This is specifically with them loaded. So others that have really struggled in this regard, DeYoung was batting 110, O'Neill 143, and Carlson, Burleson, Motter, and Yepez are a combined 0 for 15 with the bases loaded so far this season.
So basically the answer to this is Jose Fermin has not gotten an opportunity with the bases loaded.
Last year, your best players with the bases loaded were Goldie, 355 batting average, Tyler O'Neill, 365 batting average. This year, again, 143.
Small sample.
Nolan Arenado. All of these are incredibly small samples.
One scenario of bases loaded for Tyler O'Neill.
Nolan Arenado batting 400 last year. Albert Pujols, surprisingly enough, was just a 220 hitter with the bases loaded a year ago. Tommy Edman has had the biggest drop-off on the team. He was batting 333 in those situations last year. He is batting 183 in those situations this year. So Again,
Remember
all
the
of
days
this
of
is
Matt Carpenter with bases loaded?
fun with small sample sizes, but I mean, you've just got too many guys that are hitting in the middle of your order or have hit in the middle of your order that aren't coming through, specifically Gorman, Walker, Contreras, O'Neill. When those guys aren't hitting well with the bases loaded, it's going to look like this.
And I'd be curious, too, and I don't imagine you have these numbers, unless your deep dive really took you deep last night, but, like, at what point in the seasons did this happen? Like, first half versus second? And, again, I figure you didn't go this deep. First half versus second half. First half was a different team than the second half team right now.
No, they both stink.
No, this team's better offensively. Remember, BK yelled at me.
I mean, I guess offensively they have been playing better as a unit, but...
So you want to go up to, like, July 1st?
Sure. I said first half versus second half.
That's
whatever
about right.
you want to allocate that to
So
be.
let's see what the Cardinals did in the first half of the season. They were batting 188 with a 575 OPS.
Bet you it's better in the second half.
Let's find out what it is in the second half together. Drum roll, please. In the second half of the season, with the bases loaded, the Cardinals are hitting.
Shin splints, hurry up!
167 within a 500 OPS.
Even worse.
That's because
They've only had 35 plate appearances, so again, super small sample size.
but do it individual players from first half to second half.
No, I'm not doing that. The reason why I bring this up, Alex, I asked you the question, do you think this is luck or do you think this is something that's like very real? I do believe in the clutch gene idea. I do think sometimes your sphincter gets a little tight into big time situations, right?
Mine's typically when I can't find a bathroom.
So I think the Cardinals have at times this year been pressing. And I think that comes into play when you've got the bases loaded. I think there are certain situations in sports where, like, it's just you and you got to come through. Like, I think free throws can become more mental than they are physical. When you are in your own head and you just don't want to be there on your own making this play, right? In the NFL, I think drops can become mental, where it's just you running down the sideline, you're free, and you've got the ball, you're tracking it down, and then you get the yips.
Hockey with the breakaways.
Absolutely. I think there are certain situations where that can happen. I think a runners in scoring situation kind of thing can be about feel sometimes. I think there are certain teams, we saw this in 2015, the Cardinals were unbelievable with runners in scoring position, and it just never cooled off that season, even though every statistical analysis would tell you it should. It's because they had a feel about them. They went up to the plate and they knew we've come up in these situations so many times, and every time we come through, we find a way to drive that run in. This year, it's been the opposite for the Cardinals. I don't think it's because they suddenly stopped working on those situations compared to where they were last year. I don't. I refuse to believe that because I've seen it. They do work on that stuff. I think they got into their own heads. I think they were domed up for the majority of the season, and I don't expect this to sustain next year. I think they have good enough hitters in the lineup that if it doesn't get off to that avalanche of a terrible start and snowballs on them, I think they will find a way to start coming through in those situations, and I expect the offense to be much better next year in these situations than they were this year.
And I think to that point, last night on the broadcast, Quintana allowed his first home run, and I don't remember how long. It's been a really long time to O'Neill. And you saw him smiling. John Smoltz on the broadcast, he knew about that. He knew that he had that kind of record, that streak going. Cardinals knew, remember early on, and it was like, hey, the Cardinals are a casual 0 for 30 with the bases loaded in the season. The Cardinals knew that, and to your point of them starting
Matt
to
Carpenter,
press.
remember his numbers with the bases loaded? He walks up to the plate every time. He's
Home
like,
run.
got a 1,500 OPS in these spots. I'm just going to come through again.
Matt Adams in pinch hitting situations, every time he walked to the plate, it was like, I'm going to get a hit. The clutch factor, though, that we're talking about is the same clutch factor that I get so skeptical about this team in the playoffs. Because in the last few seasons, offense goes completely dry. You got an MVP performance. You got Nolan Arenado. Offense goes completely dry.
But you know how quickly that can turn? That's the one thing that I would say is, like, I view this stuff with the runners in scoring position, it can turn on a dime. Not in season. Typically, this takes an off season of, like, clearing your head mentally and resetting. But next year, if the Cardinals come out early in the season and for the first month, they're, like, batting 400 with runners in scoring position, boom, that whole story is over. But next year, if they get into the first playoff series and Nolan Arenado goes like 10 for 20 in that series, I think suddenly the conversation about him going cold in the playoffs over.
Agreed, 100%.
About it.
But I don't think it's about an individual player. I think it's about the entire team in that spot.
I think it's about two. I think it's about two guys. I think the real story about the Cardinals in the playoffs has been about Goldie and Arenado. If those guys come through, like when they lost to the Phillies, it was easy to explain, guys. We could talk about them taking out Quintana in the 5th inning. We could talk about the weird defensive positioning and the ground balls and whether or not they should have gone to the bullpen quick. Like all of that stuff we could talk about. ultimately it came down to two things. Goldie and Arenado went cold. Arenado specifically was incredibly unlucky, and they lost.
Yeah.
Because their two big guys didn't come through and weren't able to come through. If that changes next year, if they get to the playoffs, they'll be fine.
I look at a roster of
If they've got the
offense
pitching.
and the clutch factor, the big bright lights, they get way too big for a lot of these guys and it disappears. And that's my initial skepticism going towards the playoffs is it going to last? Because this team looks great right now in August, September. Is it going to matter when you get to the playoffs?
And it's a fair skepticism. It really is. But I would say I don't think that Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt are like these wiltering flowers that are just, they're soft and they get into the playoffs and the pressure is too much for them. I think they had a really bad 2-game sample size. Yeah. I think we've seen that from every player in the history of Major League Baseball. And when you only have 2 games to judge a player on, we sometimes do make a little too much of those. Now, it's fair to be critical of them, but I don't think that those guys are suddenly bad playoff performers because of that. I need to see it for a longer extended stretch of time. And really, it just comes down to next year. Avoid that wild card series. Get into the top 2 in the National League. Avoid the wild card. Get yourself into a 5-game sample size, and then maybe things can change a little bit for you. But I think it will change. But first, man, there's a bunch of other stuff that has to happen. You got to get the pitching. You got to get this defense settled down. You got to start coming through in the regular season with the bases
Add to the
loaded.
bullpen.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 options. Alex, we'll tell you which one's got to go.
I don't believe you.
Here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals fell to the Mets yesterday 4-2, and they are back in action tonight. 7:15 will be first pitch as Zach Thompson gets the start for St. Louis. And Masyn Winn's contract was selected by the Cardinals as he'll be up on the big league club tonight as they place Lars Nootbaar on the IL. And news out of the NFL, Jadeveon Clowney has signed with the Baltimore Ravens. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Three 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. 4 ones gotta go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which ones gotta go here on BK and Ferrario. By the way, I'm just sitting here watching a bunch of Masyn Winn highlights. My God, dude. Defensively, he's gonna be so much fun to watch. Like, we haven't seen something like this defensively since blank.
Ozzie Smith.
Can you think of a more... I guess
Brendan
you can maybe
Ryan
argue,
had his moments, man.
and I'm not even talking specifically at shortstop.
Oh.
Like, Arenado has this stuff that he does. His is more like creativity, though, where he's like this crafty player. He's got some unbelievable plays, don't get me wrong.
Bader had
but they're
plenty
different.
of them.
I think Bader's the one that I would point to as like, how did you even get to that ball?
But if you're
in
going
terms of recently?
just shortstop, I mean, it's Ozzie Smith.
Yeah.
I'd probably agree.
Because Renteria wasn't that guy.
Peralto's not
like
that
I said,
guy.
Brendan Ryan had moments, but it wasn't consistent enough.
He wasn't like
Edmonds
Gold
made
Glove
some of
caliber,
these
though.
plays. Not with the throwing. That's the difference between him and Masyn Winn. But he's made some plays where like,
Brendan Ryan used to get the balls that I thought there's no way somebody could get. Again, the arm wasn't as good as Masyn Winn, but he was able to get to some of them.
Maybe the recent closest, not at shortstop, but on the infield that has been developed within the system is Wong. Wong was incredible.
That's a really good one, yeah. I think we forget about him
Granted,
sometimes when talking about these guys.
Wong sometimes effed up the easy plays, but hey, it was pretty cool when he made the flashy ones.
I think we might see some of that, by the way, with Masyn Winn.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at his fielding percentage down in the minors, now take all of that with a grain of salt. You don't know what the official scores are like down there. But keep that in mind. It could be topsy-turvy, but the significant plays, he's going to make a lot of them. All right, one's got to go chocolate candy edition. Twix, Snickers, Kit Kat, or Milky Way?
This is simple. Milky Way's got to go. Not a big fan of Milky Way. All the others are like the goats of chocolate candy. Kit Kat's number 1 out of all of these,
Agreed.
but Milky Way's got to go. If I see a Milky Way, it's going in the trash.
I think I might be there with you. I like the Snickers. I like the little peanuts in it. Twix is okay. I'm not big on caramel, though, but I would probably say Milky Way.
You're not big on caramel?
Yeah, I'm not a caramel guy.
Why? It's sugar.
I know, but I don't like it.
It's literally just melted sugar.
I don't know, but I don't like it.
Dude, caramel's legit.
Okay.
It's just got to be used in the right manner. Milky Way's caramel, but it's like got to be used in the right manner.
I'm with you. Milky Way does nothing for me. For some reason, it's just...
Twix, you get that crunch.
My chocolate's got to have the crunch. If you don't have a crunch in a chocolate, I'm out.
Yeah, the Twix is great. Kit Kats are fantastic. Snickers are the GOAT. Milky Way's got to get out of here. They don't even belong in this situation.
I don't even like Hershey bars unless it's like the almond Hershey bars. You got to have a crunch.
I don't mind the Hershey bars. I can do that.
I hate Hershey Kisses unless it's the almonds or the cookies and cream.
Caramel or caramel?
I say caramel. Caramel says that.
Feels like it's
that's
too
the
much.
rich people.
Yeah, it feels like you're trying to do
would
too
you
much
like
there.
actually, BK probably says it every once in a while. Would you like some
He
caramel?
probably cuts his candy
Would
bar.
you like some caramel with your wine?
He probably goes fork and knife to eat his candy bar. He can't get his fingers to
Pinky's
that
always
thing.
up.
With your wine, has anybody ever...
Yeah, chocolate and wine, man.
Is that a thing?
Caramel?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's just if you like caramel, you're
That
going to go
sounds
to
like
extra
a
chocolate.
terrible combination.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. One's got to go Blues Young Players Edition, Alex. Neighbors, Bolduc, Snuggerud, or Dvorsky. I know who you're... Can I say who you're going to say before?
I don't think you know who I'm going to say.
You're saying Bolduc.
No, Neighbors.
Whoa!
I think the other three have all offensive upside, and I think the highest Neighbors can get to is 15 goals a season. I think Neighbors is going to be a perfect fourth-line player, and these others are top 6.
Didn't realize Alex Hated
I don't
physicality.
I don't hate physicality, and I don't
Hated
hate Jake Neighbors.
200-foot players.
I think you
You're
need Jake Neighbors.
all about the team chemistry in the locker room. And I can tell you now, Jake Neighbors is a guy that's great in the locker room.
How did it go last year when he was in the locker room?
Oh, it wasn't fair. He got sent to the AHL.
He shouldn't have been sent down. That was the problem with the clubhouse.
Yeah. They treated him like the Cardinals treated Jordan Walker.
There were a lot more problems in that clubhouse. Hey, I didn't know we had a lot of Zachary Bolduc defenders or Jake Neighbors defenders in this camp.
I would say Bolduc.
Yeah, I would say Bolduc as well. I'm genuinely shocked by your answer here.
I think you're just trying to be that guy.
I like offense, just like T-Bone likes slug baby slug. I like
the
offense.
Next Jordan Kyrou. You've been the biggest Jordan Kyrou defender all along, and you're a closet Bolduc fan.
If there's one person that you know that loves him some Jordan Kyrou, it is me.
I mean, clearly, because Jake Neighbors, the next Braden Shen, you're saying get rid of him. His ass is grass in your mind.
Yeah, sure.
314-399-9646 is the
that's the exact conversation we just had.
One's got to go.
I was there for it.
2024 improvement editions.
Ooh.
The rotation, the bullpen, the defense, or clutch hitting.
Well,
can I say all of them? Actually, can I keep all of them? The last one's not an issue?
Yeah.
How'd they do against Paul Blackburn?
That's one that's got to go. I'd trade for that guy.
Oh, geez. Yeah, we had that conversation yesterday.
Which one could you most easily overcome next year is what I'm trying to think.
Like that you don't upgrade?
Yeah, if one of these things doesn't improve, which one is least likely to tank your season?
Defense.
I think that's where I'm at as well. I mean, we saw the Phillies win the National League last year.
Yeah, wait, tank your season?
Oh. Yeah, which one of these things, like, if you do not improve it,
you can get away with.
Still go further into the postseason. I think it's probably the defense.
Yeah, probably defense.
Because I think if you add swing and miss,
hitting,
you can get away with it. And even if you didn't have the clutch hitting, like this team's got enough power to where it could make up for some of that. And then if you don't upgrade the rotation, well, look at where you're at now.
Yeah.
And to me, same with the bullpen. You don't upgrade the bullpen. It's the same as the bullpen gets kind of undershadowed with the Cardinals pitching issues, like the Blues forward group gets undershadowed with the defensive issues, in my opinion. So to me, the bullpen has to get fixed.
I agree. I would go with the improved defense. If I had to get rid of one of them, that would be the thing. And I say that as somebody that obviously values defense in a significant way. But
it's been drooling over Winn all day.
If it comes at the expense of improving your rotation, your bullpen, or clutch hitting, which is a necessary thing, as much as people will laugh at it, like if you're not a good clutch hitting team, you can't come through, and you're not going to be a legitimate contender. So I have to put those in front of defense, but the truth is you need all of these things. You have to improve in all four areas, otherwise you're not going to be able to be a legitimate contender next year.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind and finish things up for this week's version of BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Hey, if you missed anything from today's show or this week's shows, be sure to check them out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app, and on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. That's youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. If you want to see these beautiful faces, Alex, on YouTube, you can do that each and every day, starting at 11 a.m. And then after the show, you can watch it in its entirety over there on YouTube. There's a good chat that goes along throughout the day as well. You could get involved with everybody else that's watching as the show takes place. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
All right, Alex, the big story today is that the Cardinals have made it official. Masyn Winn getting the call up to the big league club. He's going to be number 0 for the Cardinals, just as Damian Lillard is in the NBA.
You knew that right off the top of your head.
That's right. That was the first one that came to mind for me. When you think of the number 0, the guy that comes to mind for you is?
Jason Tatum, Bugs Bunny, and Space Jam.
Obviously. So Masyn Winn since June 1st. This is the last 55 games down in the minor leagues, Alex. His per 162 game pace, based on what he's done, 215 hits, 35 doubles, 35 homers, 12 triples, 130 RBIs. He's on pace as well for 20 stolen bases and 177 runs scored.
Sounds like a Hall of Famer.
Just ridiculous numbers over his last 55 games. He's batting .325 in that stretch with an OPS of near 1,000. Now, this is where we tamp down the expectations a little bit. You shouldn't expect that upon his call up to the big league club. We should hope the rest of the way he's an average hitter and he shows excellent skills defensively and he features that speed that we've heard so much about. If you see all of those tools and they start to come together in a meaningful way over the last 6 weeks of the season, man, that's a win. No pun intended for the Cardinals with their call up of Masyn Winn the rest of the way. That is what you were hoping to accomplish. You should be batting 9th every day, starting at shortstop, 5 out of the 6 games every single week, and you see what it looks like going into the offseason. You get him the cup of coffee so he can make the necessary adjustments in the offseason, and then next year, boom, game 1, he's your starting shortstop for the foreseeable future.
Yep. Frankly, you should have no questions by the end of this season that Masyn Winn is your shortstop next year from the opening day of it. If you're skeptical that he still needs more work, then something went wrong at the major league level. Give him all of the reps he needs, do all of the adjustments from now until the end of the season. But Masyn Winn, people should be excited about this because the Cardinals have been waiting and crossing their fingers and toes, hoping that he is the guy that they expected him to be by passing on those 2 free agent classes. But Masyn Winn has shown you all of the capabilities in the minors that he can be. So now it's just a matter of unleashing the dog and letting him run.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how he adjusts to major leagues. And remember, he said, too, he's tampered down kind of his own expectations. And he said, I can't remember an exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, hey, each time I get to a new level, I start off slow. And
he said it takes him about a month to really adjust to that stretch.
And this is why I was so adamant about them getting him up here to the big leagues is he's going to figure out the holes in his swing. Again, his defense should translate. His defense, his base running skills, his speed, that's all going to translate to the big leagues. But his bat have low expectations for when it starts. But the good thing is he's going to get to an idea of, hey, how are major league pitchers getting me out? And then he can go into an offseason, or maybe, and hopefully you start to see those adjustments come about mid-September. And then you see those and you go, okay, I can see why the Cardinals are so high on this kid.
Somebody on the text line makes a really good point. Gorman, Walker, Burleson, and Carlson all had better minor league numbers when they were down in the minor leagues, so the kid's probably going to take some time to adapt. Absolutely. The expectation for Masyn Winn is glove first, bat develops as his defense keeps him in the lineup. That's the thing that's been so difficult with Jordan Walker, is that the bat is pretty good, but the defense is such that it's almost hard to keep the bat in the lineup because of the defense. It's going to be the opposite with Masyn Winn. His defense should be so good that it props him into the lineup every day, and then that allows him to, over time, develop offensively. So next year, you might get midway through the season, and he's batting like .225, and you're thinking to yourself, man, can this guy play every day? The answer is yes, and he should continue to play every day because he's giving you what you need from him defensively. And that is also one of the things that's most important about where this offense is right now, Alex. You don't need him to be a leadoff hitter for you. You don't need him to bat 5 or 6 in your lineup. Right now, that guy should just be batting 9th every day. It's what Harrison Bader honestly should have been at the beginning of his career, but they asked him to be more. You needed Steven Piscotty to be something that he was incapable of being. You asked Paul DeJong to immediately come up and be your cleanup hitter. Carlson, same thing. You were in a playoff series in his rookie year in 2020. Carlson was batting cleanup for you. That was totally unfair to these young kids when they were coming up. Instead, Jordan Walker's been batting 7th most days. Great. That's perfect for his development. Masyn Winn will be batting 9th because you have so many other hitters that are proven that can do it at this level, and you can just let him be the focus of what his defense is doing while the bat develops.
The other part that I think people should keep an eye on from now until the end of the season is the impact on the ball club around him.
Absolutely.
I mean, Masyn Winn talked about how he tries to be the life of the party and the guy that gets everybody hyped up. And if go look at the reaction of the Memphis Redbirds roster on Twitter. BK and I both retweeted it. The reaction of his teammates, of him getting that call up, was like every one of them got called up to Memphis. And if that's the impact he has on that ball club, imagine what he's going to have on guys like Arenado and Walker and Gorman. He's going to have a massive impact from now until the end of the season.
Walker's called him one of his best friends. He said he's the closest thing that I have that's not blood to family.
Burleson said he's close with them too.
I mean, I think it'll be good for those young guys to have one of their buddies back into the clubhouse as well. Alex is out next week. T-Bone's going to be stepping into the big chair in the midday show. I know it's a step down from what he's been so far this week.
AAA for him.
Double A to Triple A.
He is going to be co-hosting with me next week, so a big step up nonetheless. Happy birthday to our guy,
T-Bone.
Tanner Hendrickson. He's turning, I think, 15 today, so we're very proud for him.
Almost there to drive.
Next year,
Get out
going to
my
be able
booster
to drive. Super excited for him. Happy birthday, buddy. Send him his congratulations on Twitter if you could. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll be back same time, same place on Monday. The Fast Lane's coming up next.
Like Channing Tatum when I dance.
Body is a wonderland.
What the